What I'm about to show you is my complete clothing brand roadmap that has taken me over 5 years to create and implement to my own brand. But I'm confident that if I check off all these boxes and if other brands check off all these boxes, the probability of each brand making a lot more money in 2025 will drastically increase. I'm talking, this is like the difference between brands that go bankrupt and shut down and the brands that go on to make millions of dollars. So this video is for anyone interested in starting a clothing brand, or maybe you currently run a clothing brand. No matter what level you're at, I'm sure you will learn something or be able to apply something from this video that contributes to making more money. There are 6 components to this strategy, including a design system, high quality products, content, photos and videos, an excellent e-commerce experience, a comprehensive operations system, so that way orders can get shipped to customers within 2 days. When customers receive their orders, they are greeted to a wonderful unboxing experience with custom packaging. And the last step is marketing, which includes email marketing, paid ads, and influencer partnerships. I'm just going to break down each of these sections one by one. I have a whole video about design systems on my YouTube. I highly recommend you check it out. It's very comprehensive. It's going to give you a really good idea of what you need to do for your typography and logos and fonts, things like that. But if you are unfamiliar with what a design system is, it's like a rule book that helps keep everything about a brand's design consistent and easy to use, whether that's on a website, a mobile app, or a product package. It includes all the guidelines for how things should look and work, like the colors, fonts, and even how buttons or images are placed on the site. This system makes sure that no matter where anyone sees the brand, whether it's on social media, in an ad, or in a store, it all feels connected and familiar. It also helps designers and developers work faster by giving them a clear set of instructions to follow. I'm making a conscious effort to consistently apply my brand's design system across all platforms, website, packaging, marketing materials, and social media to build brand recognition and trust. In the past, I had an unfinished design system. The website and social media content had different logos and fonts than the garments and packaging. Having different logos and fonts makes it feel like there are 2 different brands that I'm promoting, which dilutes the brand value in the eyes of the customer. It makes it harder to sell products. The more consistent you are, the easier it is for the customer to understand what the brand is all about, even subconsciously, even if they're not thinking about it specifically in the forefront of their brain, like, oh, that's a different logo than I saw last time. The disconnect between the 2 logos is going to make it harder for that customer to make the connection from the first time they saw your brand. There are 3 main factors that determine the quality of a brand's garments. The first is premium materials and craftsmanship. From now on, my brand only sources premium fabrics and materials that look and feel luxurious to justify a higher price point. The designs need to go beyond mock-up packs and designing on blanks. I personally use Clo 3D to create custom patterns for all of my brand's garments. I give the tech packs and patterns that I create within Clo 3D directly to my manufacturer, and then they begin sample production right away. Speaking of manufacturer, you will need a reliable manufacturing partner. You want to make sure that your manufacturer replies on time to messages and emails. They stick to deadlines and they give you proper estimates on how long sampling will take, bulk production will take, etc. You want to make sure that your manufacturer can give you strict deadlines and timelines, so that way you can properly prepare your release strategy, and then your manufacturer is 2 or 3 weeks late with the shipment, or the logistics hold you back. And then it doesn't matter how good your materials are or how good your designs are. If your customer can't get your product, or if logistical issues with your manufacturer hold back your launch, all of that hard work will be for nothing. I get some of my products made in the US and other products made in China. For products made in the US, I showcase the domestic production and emphasize craftsmanship and support for the local economy. For made in China products, I emphasize small batch production and ethical labor practices because, at least in the American fashion market, People will be more skeptical of your brand if they see that products are made in China versus made domestically. To counter that, provide more information about your manufacturer. Be more transparent. People want to know that your products are not being made in a sweatshop and that workers are being treated fairly. And that despite being made in China, the fabrics that you sourced are very high quality. There are ways to still be luxury or premium and have made in China products, but you need to find a reliable manufacturer. The manufacturer I've been using in China for about 3 years now is way more reliable than the manufacturer that I use in the US, which is ironic because people typically think, oh, made in the US, especially because the manufacturer is in LA. They're in the same time zone as me. They're in the same city as me. You would think that communicating with them and getting samples made would be a less painful and less time-consuming process than getting products sampled and made in China. But in my experience, that is simply not the case. Also, domestic production of garments is like 5 to 10 times more expensive than doing it in China. I'll make a whole other video about that in the future. The next category is content. I've made quite a few videos about content for clothing brands. I've broken down over 1,000 images on my YouTube channel in the last 2.5 months. I highly recommend checking those out. But for this video, I'll keep it fairly brief. There are 4 main pillars of content that I make sure I shoot for every single collection. The first pillar is e-commerce content. Investing in high quality e-commerce photos is going to have the biggest impact on your short-term sales for your brand. If anyone is going to impulsively buy anything on your website, the e-commerce photos will convince them to make that purchase. The goal ultimately with e-commerce content is to just sell products. Shooting against a white background and a white cyclorama is ideal because it removes all background distractions from the clothes, so you can just focus on the clothes. The next pillar of content is editorial. Editorial content has high art direction standards, suitable for fashion magazines and press. For my past collections, I had editorial video that I absolutely loved, but I did not have many editorial photos. One item from 2023 was featured in GQ, which was an amazing opportunity for my brand. But I wish I had more editorial style photos for that product so I could push even harder and really capitalize on the GQ press that I received. The goal with editorial photos is to sell a feeling. You just want to make someone feel something so they stop the scroll. They're scrolling through Instagram, maybe they follow a bunch of brands, and then boom, your editorial style photo that looks like a glossy page in a luxury magazine stops that person from scrolling, and then they spend 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds on that post just looking at the photo, which then hopefully will entice them to click on the brand's page and then follow, etc. The third pillar of content is lifestyle content. I take photos and videos in places that reflect the lifestyle that my audience dreams of or wants to have. Also, if you have any plans of getting your brand into retail locations like a department store or a small boutique, they're going to ask for lifestyle photos. And then the fourth pillar is founder content, which sells the vision of the founder and establishes brand loyalty and brand authenticity amongst customers. There's nothing more authentic than a clothing brand founder wearing the clothes that their brand releases. It shows customers that the founder can walk the talk. If you're a founder and you live and breathe your brand, and it's all you post about and it's all you think about, that's going to resonate with an audience. The next category is an excellent e-commerce experience. I personally use Shopify. I think at this point it's industry standard. It's so easy to set up and get implemented right away. If you have a little bit of money to spend, I highly recommend getting a premium theme. They're usually around $300, but they're totally worth it. My Shopify website uses the baseline premium theme, and then I added some custom liquid code to it to make it a little bit more unique than all of the other brands. There are also quite a few plugins that I use on my Shopify store that improve functionality, like upsells and bundles, without compromising the site speed. Sometimes adding plugins and custom code can bog down the site and make it slower, which has a big impact on conversion rate. It's also important to use a super simple and streamlined checkout system to make it as frictionless for a customer to buy a product from your store. And regardless of how much info you think you have on your site, I recommend adding more info. Add info about your manufacturer, add info about your design process, add behind the scenes videos, create a comprehensive FAQ section, create a page just for the return policy and for shipping. Having all of this information will make it much easier to sell products to customers because most customers need that reassurance. They need to feel confident before they spend money. This is also going to reduce the amount of buyer's remorse that happens with your customers. All the time, people will buy something online and then immediately feel bad about it. If you have no info on your website and someone just impulsively purchases one of your products, the chances of them second guessing themselves and then asking for a refund will be way higher than if you have an FAQ page and an about page and a shipping and returns page, things like that. The next category is operations, which includes everything about logistics, shipping, inventory, tracking, restocks, and more. For all shipping and logistics, I work with a third-party logistics or 3PL company called Pietra. Pietra is very reliable, and they allow me to store small bulk orders at their warehouse for very cheap. This is extremely convenient for me because Pietra integrates with my Shopify store, so all of my inventory gets updated to Pietra in real time whenever someone makes a purchase on my site. Let's say someone purchases a jacket and a t-shirt, that order gets sent to Pietra. Someone at the Pietra warehouse will pack the t-shirt and jacket together, wrap it in tissue paper, do my whole unboxing thing, and then ship it for me. That way I can offer free 2-day shipping to my customer and charge a little bit more of a premium for my garments. Because I know that my customer is willing to pay a little bit more of a premium to get their product in 2 days rather than waiting a week or 2 weeks. Because a lot of streetwear brands take weeks to ship their products, especially if they do pre-order drops. I don't do any pre-order drops. I always order bulk beforehand. I make sure that the bulk order is at the warehouse, and then I will launch my capsule or collection on the website. And the last category is marketing. Lots of brands do marketing differently. For me, I like to focus on email marketing, paid ads, influencer partnerships, and seasonal promotions. For everything email marketing related, I use Klaviyo. It integrates with my Shopify store in 2 clicks. I set up automated welcome flows like a welcome series, abandoned cart reminders, and post-purchase follow-ups. The way that I collect the emails is with lead magnets and pop-ups on the website. I try to offer valuable content like lookbook guides, style guides, things like that, in addition to discounts, in exchange for an email address. This grows my subscriber list and allows me to constantly be emailing people with offers and updates about my brand. Most brands just give a 10% discount in return for an email address. But I think in 2025, brands will need to do more than that in order to entice someone to give away an email address. I give away style guides and lookbooks in addition to discounts. Paid ads are the most simple they've ever been. I've worked for 3 different digital marketing agencies over the last 8 years. I spent well over $1 million on ads for other people's brands and for record labels in the music industry. Paid ads are simple right now. You just need to make sure that all of your pixels and analytics tracking is completely set up. You can watch a ton of YouTube tutorials about this or ask ChatGPT to help you out. But as long as all the pixels and analytics are dialed in, you will not be leaking any data and you'll be able to track everything about your customers. If you're tracking everything about your customers, it makes it very simple for the Facebook, TikTok, Instagram algorithms to just find the people that are willing to buy your products without you needing to know how to actually set up paid ads. As the ads start to make sales, that's when I recommend hiring a media buyer or a professional to set up custom audiences, lookalike audiences, retargeting, top, middle, bottom funnel strategy. I will make several videos in the future about my paid ad strategy. It's probably my strongest skill set and something I talk the least about on my YouTube channel. I'll definitely get into it more as I'm running promotional campaigns for my upcoming collections. I usually recommend that brands focus on meta ads, so just Facebook and Instagram, and maybe TikTok ads, especially for streetwear brands, until $30,000 a month in cash flow. Then branching out to YouTube and Google ads will help scale the business. But until then, I think it's best to just focus on, let's say, Instagram, one platform. or just TikTok if you have a TikTok presence. For influencer partnerships, the number one most important thing to keep in mind is you want to pick someone that is in line with the brand's aesthetic and target audience. Don't pick an influencer just because they have a lot of followers. If their followers are not in line with what you make, you're just going to completely waste your money. And then every 6 weeks, I think it's important to do some kind of seasonal promotion. I'm not saying you do a 50% off Black Friday sale every 6 weeks, but just having something like a Super Bowl Sunday sale, 10% off, or a Mother's Day sale, 15% off. Those little promotions will sell slow-moving stock, create hype, and create quick cash flow. But it's really important to not overdo this. Customers will start to expect discounts from you and then only purchase when there's a sale, which is the worst possible situation to be in. You do not want to be completely relying on promotions to drive all of your brand sales. That will create a culture of mediocrity. People will just see your brand as a discount brand.
What's good? In this video, I'm going to talk about how I turned $100 in my pocket into a real clothing brand. Not drop shipping, not print on demand, at least not anymore. I'm making actual cut and sew collections now. When I first started my brand, it was in 2019. I was fresh out of college and super broke. I was paying less than $1,000 a month for a super tiny room in LA. If you're familiar with LA pricing, that's extremely cheap. I was looking for a job in the music industry while figuring things out with the rock band I was in. But I had this idea for a brand and I knew I wanted to make a clothing brand. But I told myself I really wasn't going to spend more than a couple $100 on starting the brand and getting some pieces made. I knew that I didn't want to do a bulk order or anything like that because the idea for the brand was just that, an idea. I didn't have a website, I didn't have an LLC. So realistically, I only wanted to spend $100 testing out my plan. But that $100 ended up leading me to selling quite a few shirts, which then gave me enough money to create a few more designs and then sell those. And then I ended up selling like 200 shirts. And at that point, I was like, okay, I think I have enough proof of concept to really take this to the next step and do this for real as a career. This video is mostly going to be about where I invested that $100 to get started. I started my brand on Shopify, but I used Printful to create all of my products. I was already drawing and creating graphic designs in Adobe Illustrator for fun. I figured I would take those graphic designs, use my Photoshop skills to put the designs on t-shirt mockups, and then I wanted to sell those on a store. A buddy of mine had a drop shipping store and was using Shopify, so he suggested that I use Shopify. I looked into that, ended up just picking that as my e-commerce platform. I had another buddy who was making merch for his band. They were creating and selling merch using Printful, so they recommended that I look into Printful. The way that Printful works is like this. I'll draw this pretty quickly. I would post about the garments on social media, on Instagram, for example, which would attract potential customers. The customer would go to my Shopify store, see the product that they want to buy from Instagram. They buy it, and then the order is sent to Printful. The team at Printful will source one product, print my design on it, and then ship it directly to the customer for me. So I didn't have to hold any inventory. I didn't have to worry about any minimum order quantities or anything like that. It just let me test my ideas very quickly. One of the main downsides of doing something like this long term is that it's pretty expensive per piece. For example, it might cost $15 to $20 to print a t-shirt using Printful and ship it, whereas if you placed a 100-piece minimum order quantity with a Chinese manufacturer, that cost per piece might drastically decrease down to like $7 per shirt to produce and fulfill. So Printful, with that math, is twice as expensive, which means you're going to have lower profit margins. So if I want to sell a $25 t-shirt, and it cost me $15 to fulfill that, I'm only making $10 profit. Whereas if I sell a $25 t-shirt and it costs me $7 to fulfill that t-shirt, then I have an $18 profit. Printful is $25 a month. For that first month, I spent $25 and I had $75 left over to use. Next, I got a Shopify subscription. I just got the basic plan, which is $30 a month. This is my old website that I used for the print-on-demand store that I hosted on Shopify. The theme that I used was called Streamline. I used this between 2019 and 2020. Here is the main t-shirt that sold the most. I sold about 200 of these t-shirts. This is my design from Adobe Illustrator that I created, slapped on a Bella Canvas soft tee mock-up in Photoshop. So this is a photo of a real shirt, but then I have my design imposed onto it in Photoshop. As you can see here, I have the file. The print quality is good, 144 DPI. I've ordered pieces from Printful before where the print quality was medium and it actually looked kind of blurry. The way that you avoid this is by having a really, really high quality PNG or upload a PDF. But anyway, I uploaded that directly here onto the product template and press save. It cost $11.50 to create this product and I was selling it for $30. What's good? In this video, I'm going to show you how I sold my first 200 shirts for my clothing brand. This is several years ago during the pandemic. I launched my brand in 2019, but I really started actually selling products in 2020 and in the beginning of 2021. This video is a little bit of a follow-up to my how I started my brand with $100 video, where we briefly touched on the concept of print on demand and how I used that to quickly test ideas in the beginning before I ended up moving to full cut and sew collections. So once I had everything set up, I had my Printful set up, I had my Shopify set up, I followed this 5-step plan to sell more shirts. 1, I created t-shirt mockups. 2, I reached out to micro-influencers through Instagram DMs. 3, I sent those micro-influencers free products. 4, I collected user-generated content from those micro-influencers. And 5, I ran ads to the user-generated content that I had collected. I ran ads specifically on Instagram and Facebook, mostly Facebook. For step 1, creating the mockups. I picked a blank in Printful that was available, had high ratings and good reviews. I placed an order of that blank. It was $11 just to test the sample quality myself. I liked the quality of that blank. I thought it was very soft and comfortable. I took a design that I had made in Adobe Illustrator and I added it to a photo of that blank, which was specifically a Bella Canvas 3001 t-shirt. That was the t-shirt blank I had sourced and liked. I combined those two in Photoshop to create this mock-up here. Shout out all the Evangelion fans in the audience if you recognize this. I ordered a sample of the garment with the design printed on it. Specifically, this is D2G printing. DTG is short for direct to garment. So someone at Printful will inject the ink directly into the shirt rather than screen printing it. I created quite a few designs. These 3 specifically were the best sellers. I'll make another video maybe this weekend about how I made about 20 of these designs and then tested them very quickly with the print on demand method. It's actually very simple. I added these images to my Shopify website. I took some photos of my friends on my iPhone and then used those as the on-model shots. Step 2 is I reached out to micro-influencers via IGDMs. So here's Nora Black, that's her handle. And I'll just show you my DM conversations with her. So I reached out. This is at the very beginning of 2021. I said, hey, are you open to brand deals right now? If so, we'd love to collab. She said, hey, yes, I'm open to collabs. Tell me your idea or how you usually do. She's from Spain, so there's a little bit of a language barrier, but I understood what she meant. And I said, for influencers, we typically send out a bunch of free clothes, and if the influencer likes them, they can post about them with no obligation. In addition, we provide affiliate links for commissions and discount codes your followers can use. By no obligation, I mean that if the influencer doesn't like the clothes we send, they don't have to post about us, and they just get free clothes. Nora checked out the website for the brand, saw all of my mock-ups, and said, I would like to publish all the clothes that you send me, so if it's okay, tell me how many items I can choose or which clothes you'd like to send me, and that way we can make sure that I can promote all of them. For collaborations, I usually do 1 post per item received, and I send all the photos by email/retransfer. I also do stories adding links, tags, discount codes. What do you think? I said, that sounds great. Would you be down to pick a few of your favorites from our store and let us know which ones you'd prefer? Maybe pick 4. This was great because I wanted to know what her personal favorites were. I always get surprised when I ask people what their favorites are. More often than not, the customer likes certain pieces that I make more than I do, and I expect certain pieces to be much more popular than others, but that's not always the case. She sent me 4 of her favorite t-shirts. I placed an order myself on the Printful store. It's extremely easy to do. It cost me $11 per t-shirt. I sent her 4 t-shirts. So it was about $45 to send her these tees. She took photos, edited them, posted about them, everything for free. This brand deal cost me about $45, which is absolutely bonkers. Extremely cheap. She has 90,000 followers. At the time of us working together, she had about half that. After she sent us initial photos, I reached out again and I said, hey, Nora, we love the content that you shot in the clothes so much. If you're open to it, we'd love to collaborate again and send you more clothes. If we sent you 6 to 7 items, would you have any interest in filming a review/try-on video? We'll also get you an affiliate link so you can make money when people buy. I also mentioned that I'm happy to pay her for posts. She said, I think that's a great idea. I can send you the pieces I love most, and if it's okay, I would make a reel combining all of them, plus some feed posts, and I can send you all the pics. Don't worry about the promotion fees. I don't like to charge small brands, and I like what you do, so if we just do the exchange, it's fine, and it makes me really happy to support small entrepreneurs. This is the best possible situation that a small brand can find themselves in. Developing an actual relationship with an influencer that will just post about the brand because they see the vision and they like the brand and they like the products. But most importantly, their audience resonates with the products as well. If the audience doesn't like the clothes that the influencer is wearing, the influencer is going to have no incentive to continue wearing those clothes. So obviously the clothes that I sent her resonated with her audience. I know that I made a few sales just from her posting about it organically. So I made that money back. At this point, I've already made a return on my investment in her by sending her those samples. But I want to take it even further. So I said, you're so awesome. Please let us know your favorites. She sent me links to my website with all of her favorite items. I sent those to her and she took more photos and I made more sales. And then I had more content for ads, which is step 5 in this process. But I'm going to make a new video tomorrow about my very simple Instagram and Facebook paid ad strategy. I think it deserves its own video. I think this is a really important video for you to watch. I'm going to show you literally changed my career and therefore changed my life and put me on this path of being a fashion designer and brand owner. If you want to get this document as well as all of my other resources, whiteboards, PDFs, guides, AI tools, things like that, grab them for free at the link in the description. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover in a future video, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next one. Pathos of Things exists to make high-quality, intentional garments for those who are actively shaping culture across mediums, across moments. Wow. That just tightened up my brand messaging so much. I'm going to turn this into ad copy and text for emails. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. If you are new here, I run a brand called Pathos of Things. I'm the creative director, designer, marketer. I run the whole brand basically by myself. Recently, I dropped a Notion workspace and AI assistant that helps you figure out your brand identity, audience, product line, and positioning without getting lost in all the fluffy YouTube content that's out there. It's going to open up like this in your browser. All you have to do is press these 2 little square buttons to duplicate this Notion workspace into your own Notion account. Then once you have this template in your own Notion workspace, it should look like this. In this video, we're going to cover step 1, where we set up the AI assistant, and step 2, where we build out the full identity profile. And I'm going to use my own brand as the example to show you guys that this can be done at any level of owning a brand and running a brand, from complete beginner to more intermediate, which is where I would consider my brand to be, to even more advanced brands.
I picked Notion because it is free and very user-friendly. And then also we're going to use ChatGPT as our main AI. Creating a custom project for this workspace will allow us to tweak the behavior of the AI, feed it information and documents specific to our business, and provide way more context so the assistant is actually helpful. Here's how you can set up your AI brand coach in under 10 minutes with no coding required. I did pretty much all of the work for you. So let's open up this create your custom GPT project toggle. Go to chatgpt.com, click the plus button next to projects in the left sidebar, create a new project and name it Fashion Brand Personal Assistant. Here we are, chatgpt.com. You might not have the custom GPT set up here, so if it doesn't look exactly like mine, don't worry. Just scroll down to projects, press the plus button for create new project and name this Fashion Brand Personal Assistant. Create project. Okay, nice. So now we have our project laid out, but it's completely empty. We need to add instructions and a system prompt to steer the AI in the right direction. So if we go back to the Notion document, click on add instructions and paste the prompt below there. So I have this long XML prompt that you can just copy and paste into your custom instructions. So I copied that. Now I'm going to press add instructions, paste that here. Now we have this really awesome prompt engineered system prompt in XML format. This already is going to be really powerful. So we can close that tab for now. The next tab here says feed your assistant context as you build. This is highly recommended. You can add files to this custom project and then ChatGPT can reference those files at any time. You can also upload things like PDFs and screenshots directly from your computer. These models now have vision, meaning if you feed it a photo, it can actually scan and see the photo and process the contents of the image. I also listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of these starter workflows just to give you some quick inspiration. Feel free to just copy and paste these into the GPT assistant. That's not what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on and show you is my workflow. So I'm going to put Notion and ChatGPT here in the same window, and then I'm going to drag them like this so they're resized. So now I have the Fashion Brand Personal Assistant on the right, and I have the Notion workspace on the left. Okay, now let's go back to the main dashboard. We just finished step 1. At least that was the quick and dirty version just for this video. Feel free to take your time with it. For now, this is good enough for us to start. And to move on to step 2, which is the brand identity builder. So if you click on step 2, it takes you to this page, and now we're really gonna cook. Right off the bat, we see these 4 main sections: the mission, vision, and value section, positioning map, the tone of voice selector, and a self-audit. Taking your time and being methodical with this and going step by step is going to be really important, because if you set up the brand identity builder correctly, it's going to make it really easy for you to then go to the next step, which is identifying your audience. And then when you go to step 4 and you're studying your competitors, you have lots of really good information for this section. When you work with it and talk with the AI, you end up feeding all the information from step 2 to step 3. And then you feed all the information from step 2 and step 3 to the AI in step 4. Over each step, you keep adding context to this big project. The AI will have lots of really good ideas for you because it really understands your style and your brand. So the first step in the mission, vision, and value section is this mission exercise to help define the brand's deeper purpose and what it stands for. These are internal and not for your Instagram bio, so don't worry about writing captions or your tone of voice for social media or anything like that. This is way before we even get to that. So the first question in the mission exercise is, what change are you trying to create? I'm going to fill out this mission exercise myself, and I'm going to use a software called Whisperflow to speak directly into the document instead of having to type it out. I want to build my own subculture of creative professionals that work in various mediums of entertainment and art. including but not limited to music, fashion, fine art, and film. I will unite like-minded people through clothing and content. Okay, short but sweet. Now let's move on to the who are you here to serve section. I'm here to serve young creative professionals like myself. I want to connect with, inspire, and be inspired by people that create culture and not just consume it. All right, what do you make that no one else does? I make a specific style of streetwear that's a cross between Eddie Salomon, Dior style, rock star, and modern hip-hop inspired luxury streetwear. I make a specific style of formal streetwear that utilizes a zero-waste design process in cutting-edge 3D technology. The style is specific to me as a founder because I am the customer archetype of the brand. So as long as I do what is authentic to me, it will always feel unique in some way. Okay, so that was very quick for just the mission exercise. So the first question in the vision exercise is, what does the world look like when your brand succeeds? When my brand succeeds, more creative professionals will be empowered through fashion and media, but the garments are wearable enough to be staple pieces in the wardrobe of a creative professional that values quality, craftsmanship, but also price, because the consumer is pragmatic and doesn't splurge on clothing for the sake of spending money. They are not typically conspicuous consumers. What long-term cultural or emotional shift do you want to help shape? I want to see more representation of polymath entrepreneurs. I want people to see that it's possible to achieve expertise in multiple domains, and that cross-pollinating skills across fields like fashion, music, and media is actually a superpower rather than hyper-focusing on one niche or industry. I am the perfect example. I went to music school, was a touring drummer, and now I'm a fashion designer, creative director, and brand owner. I want to connect with more people like me and inspire more people like me to eliminate the stigma that you need to go to school, focus on one subject, and become an expert in that subject in order to have a sustainable career. Okay, that one was a little bit of a mouthful, but we'll refine it. It's better to just get it down on paper. Let's move on to the values exercise. Pick 3 to 5 values that matter most. I like witty captions. I like being a little bit mysterious, a little edgy, but clean. And transparent. I love sharing my process, and I share everything about my manufacturer and who I work with on my website and on social media. So let's go with this. Transparency, elegance, edge, craft and design, premium materials and price point, founder-led, smart, intelligence. Okay, so that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, 7 values. Okay, so now that we've filled out the mission, vision, values exercises, let's copy and paste all of this information into the fashion brand assistant and start actually breaking it down and discussing it. So far, all we've really done is brainstorm. We haven't gone deeper yet. And we can follow this example prompt here. Here's the key mission, vision, and values that matter to me and my brand the most. Let's discuss how I can embody these values in all touch points while remaining authentic. What additional information can I provide to you in order for you to best help me gain clarity? I'll separate this with the 2 dashes, then I'll go down here, add the other 2 dashes. And then I'm going to copy and paste this entire section of the document into this chat. And then I'm going to press enter. Great. This is a strong foundation. It's personal, specific, and has depth. But to make it truly usable across all brand touchpoints, content, community, product, user experience, customer service, copywriting, we need to tighten a few areas and fill in some missing pieces. What's missing or needs clarifying? The creative subculture. What makes it yours? You say you want to build a subculture of creative professionals, but there's a gap between the vision and the mechanism. What are the unspoken norms, aesthetics, behaviors, or rituals of this group? For example, are they obsessed with the process more than the clout? Are they nostalgic about analog gear but work in digital? Do they move between gallery openings and late night studio sessions? What signals that someone is in this subculture? This is where style, language, references, and content all start aligning. Right now, the brand could use a sharper cultural edge that defines who's in the know. Without this, it risks being aesthetic forward creative wear rather than a brand that shapes cultural identity. I'm coming into this with a pretty fresh perspective. I released the first drop in a new collection on the 25th, so I'm still kind of buzzing off the high of that, and this is going to definitely put me in my place and humble me because there are always things to work on that I don't notice. And already I agree with this. Even though everything looks good and I'm happy with the photos and the drop, there are always things that can improve. So we'll unpack that, but let's keep going. Your polymath positioning, a philosophy or a flex? The polymath concept is powerful, but to be more than a personal anecdote, it needs to become a brand worldview. Ask yourself, how does the brand teach, embody, or celebrate this worldview? Are there rituals, content formats, or collabs that reinforce this idea? Can your garments act as uniforms for multi-hyphenate creatives? Could your campaign spotlight other polymaths? If cross-disciplinary excellence is a pillar, you can't just say you need to design for it. So I think the design aspect and the aesthetic aspect is close. I think a lot of creative people like the style that I make. In order to teach, embody, and celebrate this worldview, I think I should feature more multi-hyphenate creators, or just feature more of the creators that I work with in general. I started doing that a lot more on this last drop. I had some content roll out and I tagged everybody and I showcased some of the work of all the other people. But I think if I were to take it even further to really embody and celebrate the worldview, I should interview these people more. It'd be cool to have not necessarily a podcast. I don't know if I want to start a podcast, but if I just did more workshops that featured hands-on stuff with the photographers that I hire for my brand or the art director that I hire, I think that would tie it in a lot. As far as the garments acting as uniforms for multi-hyphenate creatives, I think I need to look more into the spaces where these people work. The last drop, I wanted it to be something you could wear to the office, drinks after, and then to the club after, if that's your thing. I try to make it versatile, but also a little more nuanced and elevated, so it's not quite just streetwear, but it's also not quite formal wear either. To put it into perspective, I wore the Umbra trousers to the club this weekend, and I'm also going to wear them to my cousin's wedding next weekend. So it's something I'll think about and refine more as I go. Could your campaign spotlight other polymaths? So I already kind of do that. I spotlight a bunch of people involved on the team. But until I get a bigger budget, that team is going to be pretty small. It's really just going to be me, photographer, model, producer / art director, and then hair makeup artist. Like I usually keep the team to 5 people tops. But yes, I also agree with this. I need to start implementing it into the system design, not just the garment design, but my whole overarching system of what the brand is and what the brand stands for. Part 3. Great brands have a core tension or belief that drives every decision. A few directions to refine. You believe in craft but reject the elitism of traditional luxury. You're formal but edgy. You're technically advanced 3D zero waste but emotionally driven. Let's distill these into a brand thesis that acts as a filter for every creative decision. We believe the future belongs to creative generalists, those who master many mediums and design their own identities. Our garments are made for them. I love that. Would you like help refining your version of this thesis? I'm going to say yes. I want to elaborate on this more, but I want to keep reading this. What you've done well. Your mission has real energy. Building community through fashion and media is solid. Your vision speaks to believable cultural shift, not just a business goal. Your values are clear. We can tighten how they get expressed. How this shows up across touch points. Here's how you can embody the above across all touch points. Website copy, product design, Instagram bio, campaigns, packaging, unboxing, community building, and email flows. I will take these and put them here in the document. Let's go down here. I'm going to add a new heading. Let's do heading toggle 2. I'm going to call this AI brainstorm, and then I will paste this table. So now I have all these notes that I can reference later, but I'll add some more space because we can keep going. At the bottom here, we see to best help you from here. Here's what would make my input even more strategic. Reference points. What other brands, creators, or collectives do you respect? Not for their clothes, but their positioning. The positioning map is the next section, so that's actually good timing. We can get into that. Then tone preference. Do you want the brand tone to lean more poetic, clinical, rebellious, understated? The tone section is here as well, so we can get to that. And then visual aesthetic and content strategy. So I'm going to say for reference points, tone preference, visual aesthetic, and content strategy, let's bookmark that and come back to it. For now, let's discuss the brand thesis. I really like the direction so far. Let's discuss it in more detail so I can really internalize it. Perfect. A strong brand thesis should do 4 things. Declare your worldview. What belief about the world and your audience do you hold that most people overlook or undervalue? Create tension. Great brands stand at the intersection of opposites, elegance and edge, discipline and rebellion, art and commerce specifically. Call in your people. It should feel like a code only your true audience would resonate with, an identity signal. Guide every decision, from product to packaging to social captions. This statement should act as a creative compass, based on everything you've shared. Pathos of things exists for the creative polymath, the ones who blend disciplines, define niches, and design their own identity. We make formal streetwear for people who see clothing as both utility and signal. Built to move between art shows, studios, dinner parties, and nightclubs. Every piece is rooted in intentional craft and emotional depth, because we believe timeless style emerges at the edge where refinement meets risk. So that's really solid copy. It's a little pro for me. I think I would maybe make the vernacular a little more casual. I also would change this from we make to I make. I've been doing everything in the first person perspective because I run the brand pretty much by myself. So yeah, changing that to first person, taking out these M dashes. Here we could see the breakdown of why saying creative polymath works. That's the specific identity in my tribe that I'm calling out to, so I want to directly call out to them. I'm challenging the dominant niche down narrative. Nails the category and the functional/emotional role of the clothes. Sets context. These are social settings of influence and cultural capital by saying things like at art shows or in nightclubs. Reinforcing the design values and the name origin, pathos of things, and distills that tension that defines the aesthetic where refinement meets risk. It's clean, but it's edgy. It's quiet and simple, but it's super loud and paired with rap music at the same time. So to internalize this, I read it out loud. I identified several things that I would change, things that didn't feel authentic to me, things that I would do instead to make it feel more authentic. That's really the goal. It's to internalize these things and realize them as you're making them. Okay, so let's take a break from the AI assistant for a second and go back to the Notion document and move on to this positioning map. So this will help you define where you fit in the fashion landscape, or rather the environment of other brands that are your competitors. There's a certain amount of market share. Everybody is trying to eat up a percentage of that market share. The best brands get the most market share and make the most money. So I made this chart comparing myself to an aspirational brand and then an aspirational brand above that. I have my own, and then I have Rude and Dior. If I were to add to this, I would add Elwood and probably Pool House, New York. Like, that's probably more realistic than adding like Rude or Dior. So let's continue with the next part of the exercise, the what makes my brand different part. This is probably going to be the most difficult part for everybody. It was the most difficult part for me. It's something I'm still working on. Let me take a crack at this. I believe my brand is different because I am the customer archetype and the founder. I design clothes for myself and the people within my community. I design all the garments using cutting-edge technology despite no formal fashion design education. This way, I can provide a premium alternative to the current streetwear market, targeting creative professionals that need a uniform for most of their daily activities. The influencers I work with and creative professionals I outsource certain aspects of the brand to are mostly tied to the music industry, which has been a unique opportunity for me because not many music industry professionals I know have close ties to clothing brands. So as these creative professionals grow, I am growing with them and providing them with clothes they wear on stage, to events, and in professional work settings like studio sessions. Okay, now let's do this. Ask your GPT assistant to critique your positioning. So I'm going to copy and paste this paragraph I just made here with the little dashes. And then I'm going to copy and paste this here. It says critique my brand positioning, challenge my assumptions, and provide potential criticisms that I should be aware of. Anything I'm missing, anything I can tighten up, I want my message to be clear. Okay, this is already more thoughtful than most early brand positioning work. Nice. But let's pressure test this like a strategist, not a cheerleader. Brand positioning critique. 1. I am the customer, a strength and a risk. Being your own archetype means taste and quality control are aligned. It gives the brand an authenticity that trend-chasing brands lack. You understand the lifestyle values and unspoken needs of your audience because you're living it. Risk. You might over-index on personal taste and underdevelop brand systems that scale beyond you. If your style evolves or plateaus, how will the brand evolve without losing direction? I design for myself isn't a positioning unless the self is already a powerful cultural symbol. Tyler Kanye ASAP. Okay, so nice. ChatGPT just humbled me and said, basically, you're not that guy, pal. At least not yet. Recommendation, anchor your personal story in a shared identity. For example, I'm designing for creative professionals like me, those navigating client meetings, late night edits, and stage lights all in one day. Zero fashion education, cutting edge tech, attention that needs clarity. Okay. So the strength here, great narrative, self-taught, scrappy, modern, a new kind of fashion. Tech savvy equals fast iteration, lean design, and innovative workflows. But the risk is that this could undermine perceived legitimacy if not paired with visible quality or aesthetic edge. Cutting edge tech is vague unless shown. Clo3D AI, 3D knitting, zero waste patterns, these need to show up visibly in product or content. So, all right, okay, nice. I already have that figured out. I make tons of content about AI. I make content about Clo3D. I post tons of videos about the Clo3D process, like the little time-lapse videos of the Clo3D process. Zero waste patterns, yes, okay, all that is good. Lean into the new school designer positioning. You are the post-institutional creative director. Not trained the old way, but still obsessed with excellence. Yes, I agree with that. Number 3, targeting creative professionals. Is this too broad? Probably. You're clearly targeting people who create culture, not passively consume it. Creative professional, though, is a wide spectrum. A wedding photographer, a CGI artist, and a drummer may have wildly different lives and wardrobes. That's true. You risk becoming a jack-of-all-scenes brand that lacks an iconic aesthetic. Narrow your focus or elevate your POV. My focus includes fashion for touring musicians, producers, and the people building the sound of a generation. Okay, so let's going more into the music niche. Or elevating the POV. Position the brand as a uniform for cross-disciplinary creatives who refuse to be boxed in by genre, geography, or job title. That resonates with me more. I don't want to just go into the touring musicians, producers, and the people building a sound of a generation. I want those people to be included, right? But not limited to those people. Music industry connections is an under-leveraged advantage. Okay. Strength. This is unique. Most fashion brands clout chase big music names. You're growing with them, organic, real, and earned. But there's risk not being talked about publicly if no one knows these people who are wearing the clothes. It's a missed opportunity. Could remain anecdotal unless codified in your brand story and community building efforts. Okay. Recommendation would be build subtle rituals of storytelling around this. Pathos in the Studio series, BTS content of creatives wearing the clothes while working. Feature music in your lookbooks or runway shows. Okay, so I've been doing this where I put music that I produce in Ableton as the background music for my brand's promotional materials. And that's been really cool. That's been a nice way for me to bridge that gap. I think I could go even further with this. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of maybe doing a collab, like a merch collab. I did that with the artist Sayak Das 2 summers ago. We did a custom one-of-one piece for a big show he did in Brooklyn. It would be even more lit if we did a whole custom line of shirts and hats for his tour or something like that. Another thing I thought of doing was producing music with some of the artists, like one of the rappers I work with, and then shooting a music video for that song, co-directing the music video, and then styling the artist in clothes I design. That sounds like a really cool idea to me, but it's just taking more time than I thought. But I'll get there. So this is giving me some more clarity, some ideas. It's bringing some ideas back. It's kind of pointing me in the right direction, I'd say. And then overall clarity upgrades. Here's a tighter articulation of your positioning. Paths of Things is a founder-led uniform for modern polymaths, creative professionals who work across music, fashion, and art. Designed by someone living the same lifestyle. Each piece blends technical precision with emotional resonance. Our clothes are worn by musicians on stage, producers in studios, and creatives at events, built to move through every moment that matters. This statement reflects your founder-led credibility, a defined audience, your aesthetic and technical priorities, the cultural settings where your clothes show up. Would you like to refine a one-sentence brand positioning for this? Or develop a why us paragraph for your about page or pitch deck? I recommend that you get in there and play around with the tone of voice selector yourself, but let's jump to this why now, why you self-audit, which is like what this why us paragraph is referring to, and then we'll wrap. So these questions in this self-audit are difficult questions to answer, and it's okay if you don't know the answer to them right away, but that's good because you want to work through these difficult questions and get clarity on them and work them out. So I'm going to try answering these, and then we can discuss it a little bit with the assistant. What frustrated you enough to start this brand? I was frustrated buying clothes from other brands that didn't quite fit right and weren't my style. I had an evolving style and I wanted to experiment with different styles, and the only way for me to find my true style was by creating my own clothes and going through different iterations of the brand. Why does this matter right now in culture? This matters because it has never been easier for someone to start a brand or business with AI and the internet. I'm utilizing this brand to connect with other creative professionals to create awesome art and make a living based on my vision and aesthetic. This is the perfect opportunity for me to change my life through fashion and media, and I don't want to miss that opportunity or have regrets in the future. After sitting and reading this one over again, I think my idea is selfish. I answered this by making it about me, like it's the perfect opportunity for me to change my life through fashion. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm actually going to change culture. So let me rethink this one and then re-answer. Let me revisit this first question because each of these is going to build upon the next. I was frustrated buying clothes from other brands that didn't quite fit right and work on my style. I typically only buy clothes online, but social media brands don't always have high quality, or they're drop shipping stores in disguise. So this is actually a good opportunity to ask ChatGPT. I'm currently having some cognitive dissonance trying to answer the question about why my brand idea matters right now in culture without being selfish. For example, I initially answered the question by saying now is the time. It's never been easier to start a business. I don't want to miss out on this opportunity, but that is center focused and not necessarily about my impact on culture. I know that I want to create clothing for creative polymaths like myself. That's pretty much what we've been discussing this whole time, but distilling that into why it matters outside of me saying, oh, well, I wanted to change up my wardrobe or I wanted something that was specific for me or specific for my community. is not tied into the greater mission. So I was wondering if you could help me gain some clarity on that. This is the exact kind of tension most founder-led brands run into when they're doing it for real. You're not chasing hype, you're trying to make meaning. That's the difference between a product and a cultural artifact. Let's unpack your cognitive dissonance and then build clarity from it. Why you're stuck. You're oscillating between personal motivation, I want to build something for people like me, and cultural relevance. Why does the world need this right now? You're worried that I want this isn't enough, but it is if you articulate what your desire reveals about the culture. Great brands often start from a personal need, but become powerful when they mirror a collective shift. Let's reframe. What if it's not about you? Let's try this approach. You're not starting a brand because it's easier with AI. You're starting it because more people like you are realizing they can do many things well, and they need clothing that keeps up with that identity. You're not capitalizing on a tech moment. You're serving a creative class that's breaking old rules about career paths, about professionalism, about how identity shows up in clothing. Cultural insight that I can steal. Here's one way to put it. In a world obsessed with specialization, the polymath is making a comeback. We're entering an era where creators aren't just one thing. They're musicians who design, designers who direct, directors who DJ. The old dress codes don't apply anymore. What does a modern day creative uniform look like? That's what Pathos of Things is answering. The old rules of work and identity are dissolving. We're designing uniforms for the next era of culture makers. Those who refuse to be just one thing. That's your why now. Okay. So let's put that into this box. Use this structure if it helps. People are no longer X, they are now Y. But fashion hasn't caught up. Pathos of Things exists to Z. The world is shifting. Creative professionals are no longer just artists or workers. They're hybrids, shapeshifters, brand builders. But most clothing is still made for passive consumers or status chasers. Pathos of Things exists to make high-quality, intentional garments for those who are actively shaping culture across mediums, across moments. Wow. Okay, so that just tightened up my brand messaging so much. I'm going to turn this into ad copy and text for emails. I'm really going to sit with this and workshop this and go even deeper on what it means to represent creative professionals and creative polymaths. I'm feeling super motivated and energized to create the next product for my drop. This is only the first part of this Brand Foundations OS, or rather the first and second part. All we did so far is set up the AI assistant and go through the brand identity builder section. Then after that, there's step 3 to find your audience, step 4, study competitors, plan your clothing line, and then the brand filter checklist. Questions to ask yourself: should I make this? Should I post this? Should I say yes to this for every product you launch, piece of content you post, and collab you filter through? Definitely go and check this out. This is in the Skool. This video is about value propositions and how to craft a value proposition that sticks. A value proposition is not just your tagline. It's the core reason why customers choose you over your competition. It needs to clearly communicate what you offer, why that matters, and how you solve a problem better than anyone else. Harvard Business School breaks it down into 2 key questions. What job is your customer hiring you to do, and how do you solve their pain points better than your competitors? Let's take real fashion brand Boohoo as an example. Their value proposition could be trendy fashion at your fingertips without breaking the bank. It's simple, direct, and addresses 2 major customer concerns: cost and convenience. Their customers want the full experience to be as cheap and easy as possible. Boohoo offers a wide range of clothing and accessories for both men and women, and they frequently run promotions such as their 60% off everything deal, which directly addresses concerns for budget-conscious shoppers. The online platform allows customers to shop their latest fashion trends at home with the ability to browse through various categories very quickly. The e-commerce experience is meticulously designed to be as easy to use as possible, which aligns perfectly with their value proposition of providing stylish clothing options that are both accessible and budget-friendly. Another approach is slow storytelling, which is a method that brands have been using to connect with socially conscious shoppers post-COVID. Instead of just selling products, they are building a deeper narrative that aligns with values like sustainability and transparency. I would consider my brand to sort of fall in this category. I've been testing out new manufacturers. All of them are ethical, have sustainable labor practices, but I can't go as hard in the transparency as I want right now because not every manufacturer that I order from I end up working with long term. I don't want to film a bunch of content or put a bunch of information on my website about this manufacturer that I'm not even going to use. Anyway, instead of what I'm doing is I'm building this deeper narrative around myself as a founder, a solo founder and entrepreneur running the brand on my own. I'm making art directed content that tells more of a story. I'm not just focusing on e-commerce related content. I make video content. I outsource video content for editorial video. And I'm over time slowly building this world around the brand using slow storytelling. Through this slow storytelling, I communicate to my customers that I'm creating sustainable designer garments for people that create culture, not just consume it. I give clothes to musicians, producers, creative directors, and videographers. I know so many people in LA in various forms of entertainment and media, and those people are my target audience. And the way that I'm reaching those people is by making more art-directed content and sharing my story and not being afraid to get on camera like this and make more videos and connect with more people. I am, in a way, the ultimate brand ambassador. And I really believe that if I can get this right and stay consistent, my customers aren't just going to buy from me and my brand, they're really going to believe in the product and believe in me as a founder. I built a custom GPT that also helps me identify my own value propositions and value propositions for clients and other brands. So I'll make a video about that in the future. Please like and subscribe if you want to see that. If you want your clothing brand to stand out in 2025 going into 2026, you need to understand your competitors. Even if you don't think you have any competitors, I guarantee that you do. Even if these competitors are your friends. If they exist in your industry and you compete for market share, then they're your competitor. A solid competitive analysis helps you spot market gaps and position your brand strategically. How do you create a unique selling proposition or USP or value proposition if you don't know what makes you unique in the first place in comparison to competitors? There are 3 key steps for understanding your competitors. The first is demographic and psychographic profiling. Basically, who's buying from your competitor? If you can figure out their age, income, lifestyle, and values, you'll have the full picture of what your target audience likes to do, what they look like, how old they are, where they are. And it will also give you a better understanding of the culture they're in, beyond just what they spend their money on. The next step is behavior analysis. What drives the customers to buy and what keeps them loyal? Maybe it's product quality. Maybe it's the unboxing experience and follow-up experience. Some customers want to feel like they're the VIP. For some brands, customers just want their package as fast as possible and don't care as much about the experience. Customers of some brands want to feel like they're a part of a community. So having a sign-up page on the brand website where people can create an account and connect with other customers is important for them. The third key step for competitive analysis is trend monitoring. Staying on top of trends will allow you to easily identify when any big shifts happen within your industry or sub-niche. Also in 2025, we are entering this crazy age of AI. AI agents are the talk of the town, and it seems like every month some new big AI innovation comes through that has the potential to completely shake up the fashion industry and e-commerce altogether. Nike is a perfect example of a brand that puts all of this together and takes action on it. They didn't just build a great brand, they studied where competitors were weak and used that insight to dominate the athletic wear space. Competitive analysis isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process that keeps you ahead of the game. If you're really serious about standing out in a crowded market, that is where a SWOT analysis comes into play. It's one of the most simple but powerful frameworks for evaluating your brand or your competition from every angle. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What gives your brand an edge? What's holding you back? What external trends can you leverage? And what external risks could hurt your business? Breaking all of these down will help you pinpoint gaps that you can capitalize on. Here's how it works. 1. Strengths. Look at what your competitors are doing right and why customers choose them. Are they known for luxury appeal, influencer marketing, or innovative design? Back to the Nike example, Nike's strength is in its brand power and emotional storytelling. Customers don't just buy shoes or athletic wear, they buy into a mindset. Just do it. Next, weaknesses. Where are competitors falling short? Every brand has weaknesses. Are their products overpriced? Is their branding outdated? Do they struggle with customer service or inventory issues? A specific example, many legacy luxury brands are slow to adopt digital marketing, leaving room for more savvy brands to take market share. In 2017, Facebook ads for small clothing brands absolutely exploded, and a lot of people became very rich. Now, luxury brands have fully adopted social media, long form and short form content. So putting up a mock-up of a shirt on Facebook and running an ad to it does not work like it used to. But that's a perfect example of that time gap where small brands had an opportunity to take a lot of that market share from the luxury brands, while the luxury brands were taking their sweet time to adapt. Next, the O in SWOT, opportunities. How can you outperform your competitor? Look for gaps in the market, shifting consumer trends, and new tech. Basically, just stay up to date with trends, keep your ear to the ground, and actively look for opportunities to innovate. For example, the rise of sustainable fashion, it's huge right now. Everybody is talking about sustainable fashion, even if people aren't necessarily wearing sustainable fashion. But the rise of sustainable fashion has created opportunities for small brands to compete against the big brands. A lot of big brands do not want to mess up their supply chain. They don't want to change their manufacturer. They don't want to risk spending and wasting a lot of money changing the materials of a product that already sells really well just to make it sustainable. And then threats. What could hurt your brand? This includes external challenges like economic downturns, supply chain disruptions, or aggressive new competitors. For example, the rise of AI-powered fashion brands that automate the design and marketing could disrupt traditional brands that don't keep up, especially for streetwear and fast fashion styles. It's now basically impossible to just start a fast fashion clothing line and compete with all of these AI-powered Alibaba brands. So that is a threat to those types of streetwear brands. This was sort of a threat to me, but the way that I am overcoming it is by focusing more on my personal brand as the founder, creating a unique aesthetic and story for my clothing brand, and then tying it all in together. So it's not fast fashion. I do small runs, very exclusive. I am now putting my brand in a completely different category than all of the AI-powered fast fashion brands, which to me is kind of like the new TikTok brand. Back in 2022, all of these small independent TikTok brands started just blowing up, doing puff print hoodies and things like that. That has come and gone, in my opinion, because now people have Malengo and Pietra and Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, all of these platforms that allow you to generate AI mock-ups of images or add your garment to a model using AI. It's all changing very rapidly. So to tie it all back in to the video, threats, yes. Never get complacent and always make sure that you are really working on the brand, even if it's making money, even if you outsource the marketing. Remain in the brand and remain passionate about the brand so that way you can stay up to date with all these trends and tech, economic changes, especially if you live in the US. Wow, what a time to be an American. Anyway, I digress. In a future video, I will show you how to use ChatGPT to create a SWOT analysis for yourself or for a competitor. Like and subscribe if you want to see that. If you want access to all of my resources, like my PDFs and my whiteboards, you can access them in my Skool community. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover in a future video, please let me know in the comments and I will see you in the next one. This video is about how to identify your target audience for your brand. If you don't know exactly who you are selling to, the brand is just guessing. And if you are just guessing, money is getting wasted. The best fashion brands dial in their audience using a mix of data and psychology to understand who buys, why they buy, and how they buy or how they shop. There are 3 key areas to focus on: demographics, psychographics, and behaviors. Start with demographics and the basics: age, location, income. Are you selling to younger people with less money that want a quick and cheap experience? Or are you catering to high net worth individuals who want exclusive made to order pieces or expensive luxury experiences? These details will set the foundation for your marketing. For my brand, I'm selling to young professionals between the age of 24 and 35 that live in coastal cities like New York City or LA with disposable income. So they're okay spending a couple $100s on a jacket or a pair of pants. And then we go even deeper with psychographics. So what are their values, interests, and aspirations? Are they eco-conscious and willing to pay a premium for sustainable materials? Are they status-driven, always looking for the next flex-worthy piece? Social listening will help you uncover what actually matters to these people. So Reddit, TikTok comments, Instagram, any DMs you get to the brand page or your personal page about the brand. Posting on YouTube and my Instagram is a great way for me to get a better understanding of my customers. As I get more feedback from people about videos like this, it helps me understand you, the viewer, how I can help you. And in terms of my brand, it's really getting a better understanding of how I can sell something to you. But of course, it needs to be done in a genuine way. I really want people to share this experience with me of this brand that I'm building. The next key insight is behaviors. Look at how your customers shop or your competitors' customers shop. Do they buy primarily on mobile or desktop? Are they impulse buyers? Most people that buy fast fashion like Zara and Shein are impulse buyers. They'll pull the trigger if they see a good deal. On the other hand, you have slow research heavy shoppers, which you'll see way more often with luxury brands. Track purchase frequency and which channels they convert from. Instagram ads, for example, or email marketing. Understanding all of these things is going to give you the complete picture of your customers' behaviors. And if you can predict how they will behave, you can predict how they will buy. For example, a streetwear brand targeting hype-driven Gen Z customers would need to study TikTok trends. Gen Z customers that buy on TikTok value drops and scarcity marketing, and they want to feel a part of a community generally. So that brand should push community-based engagement on a platform like Discord. But a quiet luxury brand selling to high-income professionals would have a very different approach. They should probably prioritize LinkedIn thought leadership, invite-only events, and a more white-glove concierge service. High-income professionals don't want to pull up to a streetwear Shopify website with a poorly built AI customer service chatbot. They want to have a hand-holding, real human person experience. So what's my point? The audience dictates the entire strategy. And if you nail this, you won't just be selling clothes. You'll build an actual brand that people identify with. Here's a psychographics chart that I created for an original concept that I'm calling Skims Office Hours. I'm not affiliated with Skims, but it's just a test concept I made for practice. If Skims were to make workwear for women, the ideal customer would value efficiency, quality, and modern style. She watches Hailey Bieber, Matilda Jerf, and Kim Kardashian for style inspiration. She shops at Skims, Uniqlo, and Zara. She's active on TikTok and Instagram and follows fashion and career advice content. Understanding these psychographics will allow me to sell these clothes to this type of woman. I can cater the social media and ad experience directly to her based on her interests and optimize the amount of money that I would make. It's a win-win. This customer sees content that they enjoy, they consume it, they purchase something, they get a product that they really like, and the brand makes more money and has a successful launch.
After analyzing 500 of the most successful fashion brand names, I discovered 9 surprising patterns that almost nobody talks about, including one mistake that's killing over 90% of fashion startups before they even get off the ground. And if you're thinking of starting your own brand, you'll want to watch this video all the way to the end, because I'm about to save you from making the $50,000 mistake I see fashion entrepreneurs make time and time again. The first step in analyzing all 500 of these successful brands is by opening up either Claude or ChatGPT. I specifically started with Claude and used this prompt. Create a list of 500 fashion brands that are successful in terms of revenue, brand valuation, market share, or global recognition. Do not provide information about the brands, only provide the names in a list.
Then Claude came up with this list of 500 global fashion brands that have achieved success through various metrics like revenue, brand value, market presence, and global recognition. It then put all of those fashion brands into a document. As you can see, here are all 500 of the brand names. Once I had the list of all 500 names, I then opened up ChatGPT and used this prompt. I will provide a list of 500 successful global fashion brands. Analyze the list for patterns. Identify as many patterns as possible. Once you've identified the patterns, distill the most important and most common patterns. The goal is to have a complete understanding of why the names for these fashion brands work and how they contribute to the success of the brands. Here's the list. I use the new O1 model from ChatGPT, which has an extremely large context window. Basically, I get to copy and paste all 500 of the brand names directly into the chat rather than having to upload them as a document. The new O1 model is extremely smart and regularly operates at a PhD level. It also cited a ton of sources, including books from Harvard professors, and I left the link to all those sources in this document as well. Pattern number 1 is eponymous or founder-based names. A significant number of brands originate from the names of their founders or key designers. For example, Louis Vuitton, Hermes, Chanel, Prada, Dior, Ralph Lauren, Tommy Hilfiger, and Calvin Klein. These names leverage the personal legacy, vision, and creative credibility of an individual. Over time, the founder's narrative adds authenticity, tradition, and cultural capital. Pattern number 2, single distinctive word or short names. Many successful brands embrace simplicity and memorability with concise names, often 1 or 2 syllables, like Gucci, Fendi, Dior, Nike, Puma. Short names are phonetically easy to pronounce and remember, and they're globally adaptable, which helps each brand cut through the noise in a crowded marketplace. Pattern number 3, use of non-English or foreign heritage names. Many of the leading luxury brands use European names, like Hermes, Givenchy, Balenciaga, Bottega Veneta, and Loewe. Linguistic associations with European fashion capitals like Paris, Milan, or Florence can heighten the perceived prestige. Pattern number 4, cultural, geographic, or lifestyle associations. Like Patagonia, which is named after the South American region. Burberry, named after Thomas Burberry, associated with British heritage. Arc'teryx, a reference to the Archaeopteryx, a dinosaur, linking to a rugged outdoor ethos, evident by the use of the Archaeopteryx fossil for the logo. And the last example is the North Face, which is a climber's term referencing the hardest side of a mountain. These names signal authenticity and brand mission, aligning with the brand's core product use cases or cultural positioning. Pattern number 5, abstract, evocative, or conceptual names. Some modern brands opt for names that evoke a feeling, a concept, or an identity rather than a direct reference to a person or place, like Supreme, which conveys dominance, premium position, and top-tier status just from the definition of the word supreme. Off-white suggests a conceptual space between pure white and color, mirroring a brand that challenges conventions and societal norms. Cause emphasizes minimalism and curation, the collection of style. These names create room for a flexible brand narrative, often appealing to consumers' desire for uniqueness and individuality. Pattern number 6, acronyms and initialism. Brands like H&M, APC, Y3, and Huff rely on letter combinations that may stem from the founder's initials like H&M, and these names become potent signifiers if the brand experience is strong. The letters themselves become an aesthetic identity. I don't know a lot of people that flex H&M, but everybody has an idea of what H&M is, what it looks like, what it smells like, what it sounds like as soon as you hear those 2 initials. Pattern number 7, descriptive or functional names. Some names highlight a brand's functional aspect or product category by using age or demographic terms like Forever 21, Express, and Old Navy. Forever 21 targets young, trend-conscious shoppers. Express suggests fast, modern, and Old Navy implies casual, family-friendly clothing. Some brands use style descriptors like Athletic Works, True Religion, Pink, and White House Black Market. The word athletic clearly defines that it's sports-focused. True Religion suggests an authentic or devoted style. Pink by Victoria's Secret is feminine and youthful, appealing to the younger end of the Victoria's Secret demographic. White House Black Market describes a color palette and style, which is evident if you were to ever step foot in one of those stores. It looks exactly how the name sounds. And then geographic and cultural references like American Eagle, which represents casual American style. French Connection, which is a European fashion-influenced brand. Banana Republic, which at least started as a tropical/safari-inspired brand. And New York and Company, which showcases classic metropolitan style. Number 8, we have patterns of repetition and reinforcement in streetwear and for contemporary brands. Streetwear brands often choose short, punchy names that become emblems of subculture, like Stussy, Kith, Palace, Awake New York. These often have cultural weight, slang roots, or reference niche communities, appealing to tastemakers and insiders. When the brand becomes championed by tastemakers and insiders, the brand name itself can become a badge of identity. And number 9, global pronounceability and adaptability. Many brand names are chosen for their ease of pronunciation across multiple languages. Simplicity of sound helps brands traverse international markets. Or in simpler terms, it's just easier to go global. If more people around the world can pronounce your name, then it'll be easier to fit into that international market. So those are the 9 patterns, but why do these patterns work? Most of these names tell a story and appeal to people's emotions. A founder's name, or a culturally rich term, can tell an immediate story. Consumers embrace brands that have a narrative or a heritage that they can connect with. And when that happens, the logo or brand name becomes a meaningful symbol for that customer. The next reason these patterns work is because they're easy to remember. In a saturated marketplace, a name that sticks in the minds and rolls off the tongue often makes the difference, which ends up leading to higher revenue, more sales, more company growth, etc. Names that emphasize craftsmanship, cultural roots, or conceptual identities help move brands into their own position in the market, which helps the customer perceive the value of the brand, influencing price tolerance. Price tolerance refers to a buyer's willingness to pay. Specifically, it's the maximum price that a buyer is willing to pay above the lowest market price. These names are culturally credible, aligning with cultural or linguistic signifiers like European craftsmanship, being authentic to street culture, or displaying athletic prowess, like in all the examples we saw, allows the name to instantly communicate the brand's domain expertise, which directly speaks to a very specific customer profile. If you have the word athletic in the brand name, you need to cater to athletes because those are the people who are right away going to resonate with the brand just from the name alone. The single biggest error is selecting a name that fails to convey a distinctive, memorable identity. I see a lot of newcomers when they're first starting their brand lean towards overly generic or complicated names, making it difficult for consumers to remember the brand. If the name does not evoke the desired story, values, or persona of the target customer just by looking at it, it risks blending into the background noise. Here are 10 examples of poor brand names that use this naming mistake. Trendy clothes for you, overly literal and generic, lacks sophistication. Glamorio, forced made-up word that feels awkward and hard to spell. Fashion World Unlimited, bland and indistinct, blends into a crowded market. Edgy Togs, tries too hard to be trendy but sounds outdated and unappealing. Clothingscape, overly descriptive and lacks any emotional resonance. Chic It Up, too informal and lacks the professionalism expected in fashion branding. And so on. If you want to read this full list, check out the document. This video is all about founder-based names. Founder-based names involve using the designer's own name or family heritage. For example, Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein, Amiri. Ralph Lauren is the owner and creative director, as well as Calvin Klein, and Mike Amiri named Amiri after his own family. These names create a strong emotional link between customer and brand. People like to buy from people. I personally am a fan of the brand Amiri, not just because of the clothes, but because I'm invested in the story of the brand. And the main character in that story is Mike Amiri. When the name of the brand is your last name, that creates immediate founder accountability. If things go wrong with the brand, people assume it's related to the founder. If things go right with the brand, the founder gets a lot of credit. As long as things are going right, the personal reputation of the founder will build trust. There's nothing more authentic than using your name. It conveys genuine craft and personal investment Chances are, if your brand is your name, people assume you take your craft very seriously. Storytelling becomes easy because founders aren't pretending to be anything they're not. As long as they're true to themselves, they can just tell their story, their struggles, their triumphs, and they don't need to make anything up. When people get emotionally invested and the founder starts telling authentic stories, it becomes easier for them to build influencer relationships. An influencer wants to work with people as well. They don't want to just work with corporate brands. It's going to seem way more interesting to an influencer if they're working with a brand that has a cool founder, the face of the brand, rather than working with some bigger corporation that appeals to a more general audience. And when the founder is the face of the brand, it ensures the brand story and mission are uniformly communicated, because the founder becomes the go-to figure for all media coverage and brand representation. There are a few different approaches or types of these founder-based names. Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein, and Michael Kors are all examples of a direct full name, brand name. It's the first and the last name. This works best when it's memorable, easy to pronounce, has a pleasant sound, and is distinctive without being too complex. Another approach is to use a modified version of a personal name, like using initials, DVF for Diane von Furstenberg, or shortened versions of names like Kate Spade instead of Catherine Spade. Another example is a combined family name like DNC or Dolce & Gabbana, which are the two names of the primary families involved with the founding of the company. Which leads me to family heritage names, which use the family surnames like Fendi, Gucci, or Prada. They're typically historical family businesses based around names with cultural significance. When the name and face of the brand are based on the founder, several natural PR opportunities pop up. Founders play a crucial role in generating natural public relations opportunities through their everyday personal interactions with media and the public. They are the media face. Founders often serve as prominent figures in interviews and press releases. They get a ton of free publicity because their personal stories and achievements attract interest, leading to cost-free media coverage, especially on social media. A founder with a big social media presence gets a ton of free press. When founders attend industry events, that boosts the brand visibility. Appearances at such events foster ties within the industry, enhancing network prospects. The founder's backstory can draw journalists and influencers, amplifying brand exposure. If you have a compelling narrative or an interesting story, people are going to be drawn to that. Mike Amiri, one of my favorite designers, named his brand after his last name, Amiri, and he is the face of the brand. He's been nominated for multiple prestigious awards, like the CFDA Menswear Designer of the Year, which enhances his personal brand and, by extension, his fashion label. His insights and experiences shared through various platforms position him as a thought leader, attracting a following that extends beyond fashion consumers to aspiring designers and industry professionals. He originally worked in the music industry and was one of the pioneers of K-pop, but then pivoted to a fashion designer, which is a great story and attracts media attention. However, despite all of the amazing benefits, there are several drawbacks and risks, including personal reputation risks. Brands that are named after their founder tie the reputation to the founder's behavior. A founder's positive actions and public image can enhance brand perception, but on the flip side, any negative behavior or controversy involving the founder can tarnish the image, leading to consumer distrust and financial losses. So there's risk to the brand based on what the founder does. But then on the other hand, what happens to the brand affects the perception of the founder as well, and their personal life becomes public interest. With media and consumers closely monitoring their actions, maintaining personal privacy becomes difficult as the public associates the founder's personal life with the values and image. Any scandals involving a founder can severely damage a brand's reputation and sales immediately and over the long term. It becomes hard for people to distinguish between the individual and the brand, which complicates crisis management. There's immediate backlash, which has swift negative impacts on sales and brand equity. Negative perceptions of the brand and the founder can persist long after the incident. The founder and the brand become intertwined and are often seen as inseparable. To overcome long-term reputational damage, there needs to be strategic planning. For bigger brands, this involves hiring a crisis management team to put out the fire. Founder-based names might have complications in company sale negotiations. I'm talking about selling the company to venture capital or a bigger conglomerate. At one point, most founders decide to exit their company. Maybe they stay majority shareholders, but typically real wealth is achieved when a founder exits or sells the company. A brand heavily tied to its founder may be perceived as reliant on their personal influence, which might push buyers away if they're concerned about the brand's sustainability post-sale. For example, if Mike Amiri decides to sell the company and retire, his core customers might walk away because they're not interested in the brand without him. Something similar happened with Off-White after Virgil passed away. It seems that people in general are not as interested with Off-White anymore because it's not being run by Virgil. His personal brand was so heavily tied to Off-White that his absence makes it so the majority of the audience doesn't even see it as Off-White anymore. Determining the brand's worth becomes complex when the founder's personal reputation significantly influences its value. I'm sure now it would be way harder to sell Off-White than when Virgil was alive. There are quite a few negotiation dynamics at play. Buyers, like a big firm, require non-compete clauses, adding more layers to the negotiation process. But we need you to still be involved. We still need you to be the face. We still need you to be involved in the design process, because otherwise the company is not going to make as much money, and therefore there's no real point in us paying you $500 million. There are also potential legal issues with having a founder-based name. Conflicts may occur over name ownership and usage rights. These conflicts might get pretty intense if the founder separates from the company, leading to drawn-out legal disputes and negotiations over name usage. Another thing to think about is what happens when the founder wants to pass on the leadership. Let's say Mike Amiri wants to pass the Amiri torch to a non-Amiri person, or let's say he wants to pass the torch to one of his sons. Depending on which decision he makes and where the company goes is going to create some internal instability. Changes may affect trust among investors and customers. Maybe Mike Amiri has a specific idea of who he wants to pass the baton to, but the stakeholders and investors might not agree. Typically, any succession is going to require strategic planning. Another specific real-world example is the brand Rude. Luigi Villaseñor is the face of the brand. He's the founder, and his personal brand is closely tied to the fashion brand. The name of the brand Rude is derived from his name. The three letters RHU are used in all of his companies. His designs are narrative-driven, reflecting his own personal experiences and cultural background. He actively engages in public relations and media. He positions himself as the embodiment of Rude's ethos, strengthening the brand's identity and fostering a personal connection with the audience. The RHU prefix is derived from his first name. He uses this in various sub-brands and collaborations, which creates a cohesive brand architecture. He did a collab with Zara, where he launched the RHU collection, standing for Redesigning Human Uniform. He also did a collaboration with McLaren, which merges automotive culture, or car culture, with fashion, which just goes to show how versatile the RHU branding is. In June of 2023, Luigi faced a lawsuit filed by a minority stakeholder and co-founder of the company, George Robertson. The lawsuit alleges that Luigi misappropriated company funds to support a lavish lifestyle. Basically, he was taking company money and then spending that on private jets and luxury cars and high-end real estate, then writing it off as a marketing expenditure for the brand. I have my own thoughts about this. I'm not going to go super into that in this video. It seems like everything's going to be fine with Luigi and the brand. I do agree that in order for him to convince people to buy his luxury clothing, he needs to exude a luxury lifestyle, especially on social media. But that's a conversation for another time. When scandals like this happen, it immediately damages the reputation of the brand, reduces customer trust and investor confidence, which can be scary for the brand, especially if a sharp decline in revenue puts them into a sketchy financial situation. And then it might also affect the everyday operations of the brand. If there are legal issues or if something serious is happening to the founder, The people that work for that founder are going to be like, what are we doing right now? Should we be fixing this? Should we be looking for other jobs? Should we be jumping ship? Should we be backing up the founder and supporting him? It gets dicey. So here are some key considerations and my personal suggestions before using your name for your fashion or clothing brand. Ask yourself these questions. What's your future vision? Do you plan to sell the business one day? Do you plan on being in the business forever or for as long as possible? How big do you want to grow? Is your brand going to be just like a little local brand and that's cool with you? Do you want to really take it all the way to the finish line? If you are going to take it all the way to the finish line, what is your exit strategy? Are you going to sell it to a big company? Or are you going to try and stay a majority shareholder? Do you have international expansion plans? It might be hard for certain cultures to pronounce your name, which might directly impact sales in that region. And then the next few questions are related to personal readiness. Are you comfortable being the brand face? If no, do not even consider this. You will burn yourself out. You will crumble under the public scrutiny. Are you ready for the public scrutiny? If no, don't even consider this. Are you down for the long term, for the long game play? If no, don't consider this. Does your family support it? Especially if you're going to be using your last name. Does your family want their last name being related to your brand? And if your family is super supportive, that's amazing. But you must be ready to go all in. If you are not ready to go all in, then this will end up being an embarrassing disaster where the brand will just not take off, won't even get off the ground, and it's tied to your name, and then you just feel like a failure. So don't do that unless you can answer all of these questions. If you answer all of these questions and you still feel it in your soul that you really want your brand to be your name, then I say go for it. This is how long it takes to get a clothing collection manufactured and ready for shipping, aka the production timeline. There are 5 phases to the production timeline: the sampling phase, the revisions phase, the mass production phase or bulk order, marketing and promotional prep phase, and logistics prep phase, all leading up to launch week, starting from just a sketch or idea and finishing with a full product packaged and ready for shipping. This entire process typically takes between 5 and 6 months, but if you watch until the end of the video, you will learn several strategies to cut the timeline down by a couple months. This is all based on my specific experience running a brand for the last 5 years. If you want access to this whiteboard as well as all my other whiteboards, PDFs, and slide decks, link in the description. The first phase is the sampling phase, which typically takes about 4 weeks. The sampling phase happens after the initial sketches and tech packs are done. In my case, I am the design team and the creative director, so I create all the sketches and tech packs myself. As you can see here, this is a sketch of a button-down shirt that I made in Figma. This is the original Figma file where I sketched the shirt. Once the sketch was done, I created a tech pack. Here are 3 pages of my tech pack for this shirt. These pages include some realistic drawings of the shirt, specific dimensions, fabric details, color details, buttons and trims, logos, emblems, specific measurements, and more. These are only 3 of the pages, but there were about 12 pages in this tech pack. After the tech packs are done, I send them straight to the manufacturer to begin sample creation. The first sample that's received from the manufacturer is typically known as the alpha sample. Here is a photo of me wearing the alpha sample for the garment in this tech pack, which was based on this sketch. I went from Figma sketch to tech pack to full garment. I'll typically take 2 to 3 days after receiving the alpha sample to get feedback from peers, make my own notes, and then sleep on those ideas. Once I decide on any necessary changes, I'll give that feedback to the manufacturer, and then they'll create another version of the sample. Typically, any changes that I ask for involve the fit, the construction, or the material. The feedback I gave specifically for this shirt is that I wanted a cotton twill with a higher GSM. The wrists were fitting a little tight when buttoned up, so I added some slight alterations to the width of the wrist cuff. And one of these emblems on the back of the shirt was actually embroidered upside down, which happens sometimes. I'll chalk it up to carelessness. But whenever that's happened, I've let the manufacturer know, hey, this cannot be upside down. Like, this needs to be exactly how it is in my tech pack. And every single time I've brought it up, they've been like, okay, no worries. We'll make a new version for you, our bad. And then they made a modification and sent me an updated version. I know that might seem nitpicky, but I hold my manufacturer very accountable and up to a very high standard. If little details like logo embroideries are upside down, that tells me that the manufacturer needs to pay closer attention. If they're not paying attention to the little details, then they're probably not paying attention to lots of other things as well. But every time I've held the manufacturer accountable, they've stepped up to the plate and made it right with me. Sometimes mistakes happen. But overall, I was pretty happy with the alpha sample. To get this product done, I only needed to go back and forth one time with the manufacturer. After the second sample arrived, I was ready to go and I approved it. Ideally, the revisions and final approval phase should last 3 to 4 weeks. You don't want this to drag on forever, especially if you are on a strict timeline. That's why I typically wait a couple days before providing feedback to the manufacturer to revise a sample. I don't want to give them feedback too quickly or impulsively. I want to sleep on it for a couple nights, but I can't take longer than a couple nights. I really don't want to spend too long in the sample phase. Sometimes I'll order samples of multiple sizes for the same product, just to make sure that the pattern grading is consistent. I'll also conduct wear tests and quality checks. Once I'm okay with everything and everything seems good to go, I will approve the samples and then we will enter the mass production phase, aka the bulk order phase. This typically takes 1 to 2 months, depending on the order quantity. This phase is pretty much out of my hands, but I like to check in every 1 or 2 weeks with the manufacturer to make sure everything's going smooth. Sometimes I ask for photos as well, because getting updates from the factory with photos and posting that on social media tends to get high engagement. Towards the end of the mass production phase, I'll conduct a quality control check. My manufacturer has quality control checks built into their services, so at the end of the production run, they'll check all of the individual garments and make sure there are no defects. However, sometimes there are defects in the bulk order. That's happened to me before, where 12 of the 100 pieces for a t-shirt that I ordered were defective. So my manufacturer actually refunded me for those 12 pieces, which was awesome. But it's a good thing that I didn't do a pre-order for 100 shirts, because then I would have had to refund 12 customers, which becomes a nightmare. After the mass production phase is the marketing and promotional prep phase, which typically takes about 2 to 3 weeks. During this phase, I shoot all of the product photography for my lookbook and my website that I then use in marketing campaigns and digital ads. During this phase, I also like to post social media teasers and behind the scenes content. Every time I do a shoot, I film a ton of candid iPhone content, which works great for Instagram and TikTok. This is the time when I also will start to reach out to influencers. I see a lot of brands, especially in the YouTube clothing brand space, that combine the marketing and promotional phase with the mass production phase to save time. Or I'll see brands doing the marketing and promotional prep phase before the mass production phase. I personally don't like to do either of those methods, and I'll tell you why. First, let's talk about doing the marketing step first. Lots of brands will order really high quality samples, take photos of those samples, and then use that as the marketing material for a pre-order drop. People then pay upfront for the products, and then that money gets invested into the bulk order. So you're collecting money first and then doing the bulk order. This is pretty risky because unless you have an email list that's ready to go or a loyal customer base, it's going to be hard to sell pre-orders, especially without paid ads. Even if you have the coolest sample in the world and you take photos of it and you have models, that doesn't mean it's going to sell or that anyone's going to be interested. So there's a little bit of a dilemma here where you shoot content first because you might not have the money to invest into a bulk order, but then you need to also spend money on paid ads in order to get those sales in the first place. So either way, you're spending money. Then if you don't end up getting sales from those paid ads, then you're just wasting money on paid ads when you could have spent that money on a bulk order, even just a small order of maybe 50 to 100 pieces. That's a dangerous game to play. There are also a lot of scammer brands that do this strategy, or they'll even go as far as getting a really high quality sample made, and they'll take photos of that high quality sample. But then when they place a bulk order, they'll purposely lower the quality because it's cheaper. Or a lot of these brands will just take the money from the pre-orders and then not fulfill the products, which is a complete scam. For me, I don't want to be anywhere near that culture. I don't want my brand to be associated with that at all. So I don't do pre-order drops like that. But let's say we aren't scamming anyone, but still want to combine these two phases to save time. I have done this in the past. However, a big opportunity that I missed out on was filming content around the unboxing experience and the factory. Filming unboxing experience content is only possible if you have all of the logistics and shipping and packaging figured out. Which brings me to the logistics and prep stage, which lasts about 2 to 3 weeks and is the phase where all products are packed and ready for shipping. In the past, I shipped and packaged all of the orders myself at my apartment, but now I have my manufacturer ship all of my products directly to a warehouse or fulfillment center, and then that's linked to my Shopify store. Anytime someone purchases on my store, the fulfillment center will handle the shipping and packaging for me. I like to combine the marketing and promotional prep phase with the logistics prep phase. This saves time and allows me to shoot content around the unboxing experience, and I get to shoot content at the factory showcasing the manufacturing process. After all of the content is shot and the logistics are prepared, it's time to launch. The launch week is the week where you schedule all of the marketing activities, including the email campaigns, the social media posts, and the influencer collaborations. Hopefully, if everything is set up, you will get a flood of orders as soon as they go live. You could take photos of all the poly mailers and packages ready to go out for shipping to show customers that you're ready to ship right away, which builds trust and is going to increase the chance of this person coming back and buying from you again in the future. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down 4 main design principles that all luxury streetwear brands use. I'm going to break down aesthetics, craftsmanship, fabric choice, and functionality. When luxury brands approach creating garments with these 4 pillars in mind, they create an elevated product, which then can be sold at a high price point, like Fear of God and Rick Owens. I'll also provide some insight into how I'm applying these design principles to my own brand pathos of things. First, we're going to discuss aesthetics. Luxury streetwear brands usually have bold graphics with eye-catching logos and designs that make a statement. Specific examples are Supreme and Off-White. Supreme's iconic red box logo is highly visible on all of their garments, which turns each garment into a status symbol. People wear these t-shirts to express having money to buy an item like this, but also being involved in the culture of streetwear and using this as a way to represent your identity. The next example I have is Off-White while Virgil was still there. The use of quotation marks, diagonal stripes, and playful bold graphics make simple items like a wallet stand out. Luxury streetwear brands are also great at balancing simple silhouettes with extravagant details, which I'm referring to as minimal maximalism or min-max. Fear of God uses clean, oversized silhouettes with luxury details like zippers and custom stitching. Cherry designs garments with classic silhouettes, but then turns it up to the max by establishing a signature oversized look with much higher quality details than you would find from a regular streetwear brand making these types of silhouettes, like jeans and denim shirts. Balenciaga takes simple shapes like oversized hoodies and adds exaggerated details like this Balenciaga tape logo made out of a tape material, and the pairing of oversized hoodies with bizarre looking shoes that have exaggerated chunky soles. Taking a pretty standard and, dare I say, generic outfit and making it super unique that fits within the Balenciaga ethos. Luxury streetwear brands will also often reference the culture related to their aesthetic and their fan base. Designs often pay homage to art, music, and social movements. Like you can see here with Undercover, which is a brand that often references punk culture and counterculture with graphics from classic counterculture art like A Clockwork Orange. Hare & Preston's brand is all about workwear and environmentalism, including collaborations with DSNY or the Department of Sanitation in New York. This jacket has the official DSNY logo, patch, and there's an embroidery on the front stating the collaboration. Palace references football or soccer culture with an official Adidas collab where they created fire tracksuits and jerseys that were actually used by Juventus. Supreme often references skateboarding and hip-hop culture, like you can see here, with the Supreme x Public Enemy collaboration, which combined the Public Enemy logo and the Supreme logo, as well as photos of the Public Enemy members. Raf Simons focuses on youth rebellion and subculture, as seen in their Riot, Riot, Riot collection that references political movements and protests. One of the most popular jackets, probably of all time, is this Raf Simons Riot bomber jacket featuring David Bowie and Bauhaus patches on a standard issue army jacket. These jackets are extremely hard to obtain and usually have a price tag of around $30,000. You can see Drake wearing this jacket in the Tootsie Slide video. Vetements satirizes consumerism and global brands with this DHL t-shirt, which turned a basic logo into a luxury item. Bape combines Japanese street and global pop culture, as seen here with the Bape Dragon Ball Z collab featuring Goku in the style of Baby Milo, which is the Bape mascot. Brands like Nike tap into pop culture by collaborating with iconic artists such as Travis Scott to put out products like the Air Force One Cactus Jack, which uses DIY-style patchwork aesthetics that are consistent with the Cactus Jack brand. Now let's talk about the craftsmanship. Luxury brands almost always use meticulous stitching, unique hardware, and custom elements that help them stand out. For example, the Rick Owens leather jackets feature high-quality lambskin, precise tailoring, and custom hardware. A cold wall combines industrial design with multiple textures and custom hardware, as you can see here. These garments feature intricate stitch patterns and quote-unquote architectural construction and unique embroideries. Fear of God's jeans are hand-distressed Japanese denim with fine tailoring details. Amiri's denim, on the other hand, is hand-distressed with hand-applied embellishments like this stitching, and they're produced in small batches as well. Visvim uses natural dyed Japanese denim. The natural dye creates a deep blue color, which is not achievable with synthetic dyes, and the garments are handmade with artisanal cuts and hand distressing. Gucci is known for embroidering their garments with hand-stitched embellishments and appliques, like these embroidered bomber jackets, this amazing denim jacket, and sneakers, featuring the embroidery on the sides and backs of the shoes. Stone Island is known for technical outerwear and innovative fabric treatments like Gore-Tex, and they use advanced dyeing techniques that cause their jackets to actually change color depending on the temperature. They list that on the website, stating that the jacket changes appearance when exposed to the cold. 1017 Alex 9SM created a signature roller coaster buckle, which is incorporated into belts and accessories. Undercover blends intricate tailoring with avant-garde designs, and they're known for deconstruction techniques and unique silhouettes. Kith makes elevated basics with high-quality fabrics like Japanese denim and merino wool. Collaborate with companies like Nike and Moncler, and are known for premium craftsmanship and everyday streetwear staples. Boris Bajan Saberi creates handcrafted leather jackets and experimental fabrics with a focus on hand distressing and hand dyeing techniques, which creates avant-garde but functional designs. Next we have ERD, which creates garments with hand-finished details and premium materials like genuine leather and punk-inspired designs. The MM6 line by Margiela is known for deconstruction and unfinished items and uses high-end materials like genuine leather and silk. The iconic tabby boots are crafted with meticulous attention to detail. Here's another Heron Preston example where the brand integrates recycled fabrics and eco-friendly materials to create original technical fabrics and custom hardware for functional designs. Alright, so we talked about construction and craftsmanship, but what fabrics do they use in order to create these garments in the first place? If luxury brands are using cotton, they're using a premium cotton, which is typically long staple like Pima or Egyptian cotton. Pima and Egyptian cotton have longer fibers, resulting in softer, more durable fabrics. For example, Fear of God Essentials uses a 520 GSM cotton fleece for their heavy fleece relaxed sweatpants. The 100% 520 GSM cotton is extremely thick and high quality. Sunspell uses Supima cotton for their classic t-shirts, which is fully traceable and sustainably sourced from a single farm in California, extra long staple and twofold, which allows them to sell this white tee for $100. John Elliott's t-shirts are made of a lightweight cotton cashmere blend, 90% cotton, 10% cashmere, which creates a very breathable and soft t-shirt fabric. APC uses Egyptian cotton in their Achilles jeans, which allows them to charge 250 euros. In the past, for my own brand, Pathos of Things, I also released fleece sweatpants like Fear God Essentials. Mine were 560 GSM, which is 40 GSM higher than Essentials, but that extra 40 GSM doesn't necessarily translate to product quality. Even though it's thicker and warmer, that might not be what the customer wants. Especially for me, my primary demographic is in Los Angeles, and people in Los Angeles would typically prefer a 520 GSM pair of sweatpants over a 560 GSM pair of sweatpants, because unless it's snowing outside, a 560 GSM pair of pants is going to be really warm and probably make you sweat. Not all luxury brands use Japanese denim for their jeans, but the most revered denim brands in the luxury streetwear space typically make their jeans in Japan or export all the denim from Japan and then get them made either in China or the US. Visvim's social sculpture denim is sourced from Japanese mills with raw denim finish, which is designed to fade uniquely to each user, enhancing the wearer's personal experience. They use unwashed denim, natural indigo dyed deerskin patches, and custom selvage outseams. Capital is probably one of the most well-known Japanese denim brands. Specifically, the Century denim is really popular that incorporates traditional Japanese sashiko stitching, which reflects Japanese heritage and craftsmanship and appeals to luxury consumers. Luxury brands that incorporate leather typically get their leather from Italy because Italian leather is synonymous with luxury. The leather is often vegetable tanned, which results in a more natural, durable, and environmentally friendly product. Italian tanneries have a rich history and reputation for producing some of the best leather in the world, used by luxury brands for everything from jackets to sneakers. Like Common Projects, they use Italian leather for their Achilles low sneakers. The combination of high-quality leather and Italian craftsmanship elevates the sneaker to luxury status. Rick Owens uses premium Italian lambskin leather for all of the biker jackets. The lambskin leather offers style and functionality because it's durable yet pliable. The combination of this fabric with the precise tailoring from Italian ateliers emphasizes high fashion and turn these jackets into status symbols. More and more every day, I'm starting to see luxury streetwear brands switch to eco-friendly materials or make eco-friendly materials their whole brand and their whole mission statement. Like Pangaea, which is a brand that focuses on using innovative materials like recycled cotton and seaweed fibers, which appeals to streetwear consumers who prioritize sustainability. However, fans of streetwear that prioritize sustainability do not want any compromise on the feel or the durability of the clothing. They list all of the custom, natural, recycled, and sustainable fabric to create garments that are just as comfortable as non-sustainable products, but better for the planet. More fabric examples that they've used in their products include grape leather, recycled nylon, down made from flowers instead of feathers, lyocell made out of bamboo and fruit fiber, recycled wool, and linen made from aloe. And then the last design principle that I want to touch on is functionality. Luxury streetwear brands create garments that are comfortable and versatile and innovative, designed for everyday wear without sacrificing style, and incorporating technology such as smart fabrics and 3D printing. Off-white pieces feature multifunctional elements like zippered pockets and detachable sleeves, and showcase utilitarian design with bold aesthetics, combining utilitarian garments like safety belts with high-end luxury style. Acronym is known for modular designs, meaning that these pieces can be used in various settings and climates, feature detachable pockets and magnetic closures, and use Gore-Tex fabric for waterproofing and breathability. Adidas Y3 features stretch panels for ease of movement and breathable fabrics that can be used in several climates. The shoes feature Boost technology for comfort and energy return, and the designs are sports inspired to blend performance with style. CP Company incorporates goggles with integrated sunglasses into the hoods of their jackets for a unique aesthetic and added functionality, and they use water-resistant fabrics combined with stylish silhouettes, so you can stay dry and look fly. Nike Lab uses similar fabrics that are adaptive and wick moisture to regulate temperature, as seen with the Flyknit and Dry Fit products. And the last example I have is Valence, a sub-brand of Arc'teryx. Valence creates minimalist performance-focused outerwear using Gore-Tex, with sleek design and waterproofing for both urban and outdoor use. It's lightweight and durable, so you can wear this to step out if you live in a city, or put it on to brace the weather, if it's raining or snowing or whatever. That's it for this video. We broke down aesthetics, fabric choices, craftsmanship, and the functionality of garments made by luxury streetwear brands. In this video, I'm going to be discussing how to launch a clothing brand, even if you don't know how to design. When I first started my brand Pathos of Things about 5 years ago in 2019, I had no idea how to design. I actually went to college for music, and I was a touring drummer for a while. I didn't anticipate becoming a fashion designer at all. I didn't anticipate starting a brand, but it happened naturally. And now here I am 5 years later. I had to make a decision early on whether I wanted to learn about designing and become a designer, or instead learn how to outsource the design so I could focus on other aspects of the business. I find that creative directors and brand owners fall into one of those two categories, whether they end up being the designer and everything is based on their vision, or they handle teams and outsource the designs to said teams. My name is Chris Drago. Like I said, I've been running a brand called Pathos of Things for about 5 years now. And I make videos on YouTube documenting my process so I could become 1% better every day at being a creative director and brand owner. This video was requested by a couple different people in the comment sections of other videos I made. I'm taking a different approach with this video, using slides and talking over bullet points and providing anecdotal stories about my specific experience. This video is catered more towards beginners. I know a lot of my content recently has been catered to advanced people or people that have been running brands for a while. So hopefully this format is more digestible. All right, so let's say you're considering becoming a designer for your brand. Deciding to design your own clothing brand involves evaluating your role and understanding the implications of being the designer versus outsourcing. Making this choice is going to impact the creative control you have over your project, the time you'll need to invest into practicing design skills, and the cost. So first, really ask yourself, do you even want to be the designer for the brand? Some people get into making clothing brands because they want to be designers. And some people get into making clothing brands because they just like clothing, want to start a business, or they like e-commerce. If you design everything yourself, that gives you more creative control. It allows you to personally express yourself through the design, and you'll save money because you don't have to pay other designers. There's also a pretty serious time investment required when becoming a designer. I found that it's extremely time consuming, requires regular practice, and there's a super steep learning curve. Any skill set that has a steep learning curve is going to come with frustration, especially in the beginning. Because I was coming from a music industry background, a lot of the terminology and concepts related to designing clothing or running a clothing brand were completely foreign to me, which made me realize that I just need to go extremely hard every day if I'm going to learn the skill of designing. And it ended up taking years before I was actually comfortable putting out pieces with my designs. Hundreds of hours of frustrating practice went into that, and it didn't always pay off the way I wanted to or expected. I find it can be pretty soul-crushing when you spend a lot of time on something, let's say a t-shirt design, just to put that t-shirt out and then have no one buy it, or people think it's actually garbage, which has happened to me many a time. If you decide to outsource the designing, you'll get to take advantage of professional expertise from people that have already put in the years of work, which gives you immediate access to skills and time efficiency. However, there are cost implications to outsourcing. Not only can it get expensive, but you're also relying often on other people, which can become frustrating in the long term, especially as you refine your vision. Maybe one day you decide, okay, I've been outsourcing for a while, but I actually really have my own idea for this, and I don't want to rely so much on other people. Which brings me back to the concept of creative control that I was talking about a little bit earlier, which for me personally is extremely important. I want to make sure that I have 100% creative control. Anything that is not designed by me follows strict guidelines that I created. So that way, no matter what, if I'm working with other people or on it completely by myself, my vision remains intact. I think this is one of those things that beginning designers might not fully understand until they actually end up in a situation where their creative control is at stake. Feeling like you don't have creative control of your project or feeling like you're being held back by other people is not a very good situation and can lead to burnout. Okay, next is learning design basics. To become a designer, start by learning the basics of design through online courses and beginner-friendly software. That is how I started. Developing your style and building a portfolio are crucial steps. For online courses, I suggest platforms like Udemy and Skillshare. I find those two platforms have really good, affordable courses from people that have real skill sets, rather than someone who's just like an online guru that makes free content on YouTube. Which is ironic of me to say because some people would consider the content that I make to be guru-ish, and I put it up for free on YouTube. But for me personally to dig really deep into actually learning designs, I had to go beyond YouTube and spend some money. I'm not suggesting that you go and spend lots of money, and this is also not financial advice. Next is picking a design software to use. If you're really just starting out for the first time and you've never designed anything in your life before, I recommend starting with Canva and Adobe Express. They're super beginner friendly and allow you to get started right away. Canva and Adobe Express likely are not going to get you professional looking designs, but everybody needs to start somewhere, and this is the easiest way to start developing your skills immediately. I started in Canva and then upgraded to Adobe Illustrator. Adobe Illustrator has a pretty steep learning curve in my opinion, having never used creative softwares like that before. So what I ended up doing is I did about an hour of Adobe Illustrator practice every single night for years. I did that throughout the entire pandemic. That's how I was able to mock up the designs for my first drops. Creating mockups for clothing in Adobe Illustrator is great because you can easily export SVG files and PDFs to send directly to a manufacturer. I found when working with Chinese manufacturers, like Artisan Apparel Co., are great at taking my sketches from Adobe Illustrator and turning them into patterns and full garments. However, that really only got me so far. So now I use a platform called Clo3D to design all my clothes. Clo3D allows me to create 3D mockups with realistic dimensions based on industry standards for model height and weight, which allows me to make patterns that I then send directly to a manufacturer so they can get my sample right the first time. I know exactly what the sample is going to look like because Clo3D allows me to simulate the piece of clothing on a model as if it was real life. This saves me time because I don't have to go back and forth with the manufacturer about my tech pack and patterns. And it also is better for the environment because I use less fabric, energy, and water to create my samples. So utilizing a software like Clo3D to make my clothing actually adds a sustainability element to my brand, which I then use for my marketing. I can say my brand is taking steps towards being a sustainable, green-friendly brand by using 3D software to get my samples perfect the first time. For style development, you're going to need to experiment with different styles to find your unique voice. Like I've mentioned in a few of my prior videos, I started by making anime streetwear. This attracted fans of anime. After that, I did more underground rap music inspired styles and worked with underground rappers, which attracted fans of underground rap music. The aesthetic and styles that you pick are going to directly attract the type of person that is into that aesthetic. If you make anime clothes, you will attract anime fans. If you make clothes for outdoor sports, you are going to attract outdoor athletes. You might have an idea of what your unique voice is or what style it is that you really like. But I find that until you actually go for it and start a brand and start developing the name, the logo, and the aesthetic, you're not fully going to know. It's going to shape itself over time. I decided that I didn't want to be an anime streetwear brand anymore, so I pivoted and I don't really do that style anymore, and that's totally okay. If I hadn't done that in the past, I wouldn't have been able to shape my path for the future. As you develop your style, naturally you will also develop a portfolio. Every time you create a sample design, put it in a folder or a database where you can send it out to get feedback for improvement. I find that the fastest and easiest way to improve is to get feedback from people that are your friends, that are not your friends, strangers online, family, etc. There are lots of great Reddit groups, such as r/streetwear, where you can post your designs and then people can give you feedback directly. And then the last step in learning design basics is getting a solid industry understanding. If you're still watching this video, chances are you are interested in researching trends and studying successful brands because that's the kind of content that I make. So continue to do that because it's going to pay off in the long run. Now let's talk about delegating the design process. This is for those who choose not to design, or for those who choose to design in the beginning and then eventually delegate the design process later because they need more time for other things like running the brand or doing the social media. Finding the right designers and communicating your vision are essential for successful collaboration. The biggest thing about delegation is that it allows you to focus on other business aspects that aren't related to design. As soon as you start making sales, you will see how time-consuming it actually is to run a brand. If you're not delegating the design and you're doing all the designing yourself, chances are you're going to need to delegate other aspects of your business anyway. So either way, you are picking a skill to work on and then delegating whatever skill you didn't pick. If you want to be the designer, you got to learn how to delegate the other aspects of the brand. You want to delegate all the designing to other designers, then you're going to need to practice skills related to the brand that aren't designing. For absolute beginners and non-beginners, this tends to work for some medium-sized brands as well. You can use freelance platforms like Upwork, Fiverr, and 99 Designs to find designers. This will work up to a certain point until the brand becomes successful enough where you can hire in-house designers or you're good enough at designing yourself from practicing over the years. Another great way of finding freelancers is just through networking. You can attend industry events or join online forums for connections. r/streetwear on Reddit is a great online forum where you can immediately connect with like-minded people in streetwear if that's your thing. If you're going to be trusting someone else to design based on your vision needs to be extremely clear. The way to effectively communicate your vision is through clear design briefs where you tell them exactly what you want and don't want, with mood boards and references. Otherwise, you are just letting the designer take a complete shot in the dark, and then 9 out of 10 times you're going to say, I don't like it. It's not in line with my vision. Then you're going to have to go back and forth with that designer until it's right, which could take a ton of time and money. So having your vision clear is going to save you in both of those aspects, where it's going to take way less time to get it right, and it's going to cost you way less money. Now that you have decided whether to design your own products or delegate the designing to someone else, it's time to start the clothing brand. Launching a clothing brand involves developing a strong brand identity, understanding production, and creating a marketing strategy. Luckily, I made a video last week where I break down my entire clothing strategy. I explain my approach to production. I provide sauce on manufacturers that I've used in the past, both locally in the US and internationally in China. I highly recommend checking it out on my channel, or you can click now on the screen. In addition to having a strong brand identity, understanding production, and creating a marketing strategy, you will also need to consider all of the legal and financial aspects of starting a brand. To develop your brand identity, define your mission, your values, and your ideal target audience. For production options, consider print on demand versus bulk manufacturing and sourcing. When I first started the brand, I did strictly print on demand. I used a company called Printful, and I created graphic designs in Adobe Illustrator. Once my graphic designs were done, I uploaded them to Printful, created mockups for my website, and then linked Printful with my Shopify store. Anytime someone placed an order on my Shopify store, Printful would print, package, and ship that product for me, so I wouldn't have to deal with any of the logistics. I don't use Printful anymore, but in retrospect, it was amazing for starting a brand and learning the ropes. Once I graduated from print on demand, I reached out to a manufacturer through Alibaba and started getting my clothes manufactured in China. Then I graduated to cut and sew, and now all of my pieces are fully custom. As far as the marketing strategy goes, you don't need a crazy advertising strategy. You don't need to be running ads on every single social media platform. In the beginning, the goal is just to post. Pick a social media platform and just post, whether that's a couple times a week, once a day, whatever it is. Show your process, show screenshots of things you're working on, photos of samples you're making, personal anecdotes and stories, and give people a look into the daily running your clothing brand, even if it's extremely small and you don't have a lot of followers. Just to make sure you're safe, you want to think about all of the legal aspects related to running a brand, like registering your business and understanding licensing requirements. I used LegalZoom to register my business as an LLC, and then I trademarked the word mark and logos for the brand. And lastly is financial planning. So budgeting and financial planning are essential and often get overlooked by beginners and small brands. Running a clothing brand, in my experience, has always ended up being more expensive than I anticipated. Whether that's for photo shoots, samples, bulk orders, shipping costs, you name it. If there's something with a price on it, it will usually be more expensive than anticipated, which is why budgeting and financial planning in platforms like Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets is extremely important. You want to be on top of all your finances. You want to track and log exactly how much it costs for anything, which then will also make it easier for taxes in the future. Whether you use QuickBooks or have an accountant, uploading a log of all of your finances is going to make the tax process extremely simple. I've identified 10 of the biggest questions related to running a clothing brand as a clothing brand entrepreneur or fashion entrepreneur. And I'm going to answer them and just talk about them on video today. I think they are important for people to know, whether they're just starting a brand or they've been running a brand for a few years like me. I think I have some pretty good tips. So I'll try to relate all of my answers to my own experience running a brand. Speaking of my brand, I run a brand called Pathos of Things. You can check it out, the link in the description. The first question that I always get asked is, how much money do I need in order to start a brand? The answer to this question is definitely dynamic and not very straightforward, so bear with me. Your budget depends on so many factors, including product quality, whether you're ordering inventory or doing print on demand, in branding, which includes getting the logos made, photo shoots, things like that. For the absolute leanest minimum approach, I would not go any lower than $1,000. Anyone that's taking a business seriously is going to need at least $1,000. If you don't have that kind of money to start a brand, save up for it. Starting with $1,000 will allow you to get a couple designs and samples made for some garments. And maybe you spend a couple $100 paying your friends to model and take photos and videos for your drops. If you are making merch, doing the print on demand method is totally viable, starting with something like $500 just to test an idea. But if you're really trying to start a custom brand with its own aesthetic, $500 is not going to be enough. Getting one sample made for a pair of denim in Los Angeles is $500 just for the sample. If you're doing any kind of premium or custom collection that is more than just hats, t-shirts, and hoodies, I recommend starting with between $10,000 and $20,000. For bigger campaigns that include e-commerce photos, editorial photos, e-commerce videos, and editorial videos, I've spent up to $10,000 on one shoot. And that's with homie discounts and working with peers. Typically, getting samples made for products in China costs about $100 a sample. So if you're trying to go lean, spend that $100 on the sample, shoot photos and videos on your phone, maybe pay someone on Fiverr $15, $20 to edit the photos, make them look a little bit more professional, put those up on a free Shopify theme. You're working within that $500 budget range. The way I kept my brand afloat for years before it started making any money was by financing everything out of my own pocket from my day job. So I was working at 2 different full-time jobs in the marketing industry and in the music industry. I paid my rent and then put pretty much all of my other money towards my brand. Big question number 2. Do I need to know how to sew or design clothes to start a clothing brand? The short answer is no. I'm sure a ton of people are going to disagree with me about this. I get a ton of comments, especially on my TikTok videos, of people really disagreeing with me on this topic. But if you are a CEO, brand owner, or creative director for the brand, chances are as the brand grows, you're going to outsource or hire for various roles, including a pattern maker or atelier, and you'll work with various manufacturers that will handle all of the cutting and sewing for you. I consider myself to be a bit of a hybrid, what I'm calling neo-fashion designer, where I know how to create fashion drawings. I can start rough ideas in a platform called Clo3D, which allows me to create custom patterns with computer software rather than needing to order physical fabric and cut and sew physical fabric, which usually ends up resulting in wasted fabric, which is a waste of money for me and it's not great for the environment. So I use this tool Clo3D to create zero waste ideas, and then I outsource the pattern making and grading to a Clo3D atelier. If you want to see more or learn more about my process, you can click the link on the screen. I have another video about this on my channel. If you do not know how to cut and sew and design, you need to have a sense of taste in what you like. And you also need to develop the skill of delegating. You need to be able to communicate your vision to a team or a small group of people or even one person, a freelancer, like a Clo3D atelier. The better you are at communicating your vision, the easier it will be for these team members to execute their job and then make sure that the product is the best possible quality and as in line with your vision as possible. Big question number 3. How do I find a reliable manufacturer or supplier? When I first started out, I tested several manufacturers through Alibaba. I know that some other designers trust Thomasnet and Makers Row, but I personally don't use those. Some designers in LA source all of their fabrics in the fashion district of LA, and then they have an atelier in downtown LA sew the garments for them. But for me, my workflow is I create designs digitally, I send them to an overseas manufacturer, they cut and sew all the garments for me, they ship it to my warehouse. The warehouse is linked to my Shopify store, so anytime someone makes a purchase, the warehouse gets notified, someone at the warehouse will then pack and ship the order for me. For third-party logistics, which includes the warehouse, packing, and shipping, I use Pietra. Pietra is a good place to find manufacturers. Similarly to the process on Alibaba, I personally don't use Pietra to find manufacturers for my garments, but I did use Pietra to find a manufacturer for all of my brand's packaging. So the poly mailers, the tissue paper, the unboxing experience, everything related to the unboxing experience is done by a supplier named Yoko, and I found them on Pietra Studio. Big question number 4. How do I create a strong brand identity? I have quite a few videos about design systems and brand identity on my channel. I'll link those here. I highly recommend checking them out. But for this video, a strong brand identity comes from consistent logos, typography, colors, brand name, brand messaging, and design aesthetic. I like to lump all of these together into what I call a design system. I have a video about design systems, and I also have a video about brand style guides, which combines all of the logos and typography standard operating procedures from the design system with aesthetics and colors. If you have multiple logos, that can become confusing for the customer. Even if it's not in the forefront of their brain, the disconnect between the two logos is going to make it harder for them to recognize. And then there's a weaker bond there. There's a weaker connection between the customer and your brand. Where if that customer saw the same logo twice, that would really reinforce the image of the logo in the brain of that customer. The more consistent you are and the more a customer sees that consistency, over time, you end up building a very strong brand identity. Big question number 5. What's the best way to market my clothing brand? There are 4 main ways that you should market your clothing brand: social media, email marketing, collaborations and partnerships, and paid ads. Social media includes long-form video, short-form video, and photos. Email marketing nurtures an audience that signs up for something, otherwise known as a lead magnet. For example, a discount code with a style guide or a discount code with a lookbook. Someone wants that, and you give it away in return for their email address. An email autoresponder system like Klaviyo will log that person's information and then automatically send them the deliverable. Then a welcome series is triggered where multiple emails are sent providing more information about the brand, behind the scenes looks, exclusive videos, things like that. This is considered the nurturing stage. Collaborations and partnerships include influencers and brand collaborations, and paid ads are paid ads. I'm sure everybody knows what paid ads is at this point: Facebook ads, TikTok ads, Google ads, things like that. Big question number 6, how do I price my products? The most simple way to figure out the price for your products is by calculating the cost of goods sold. This includes materials, packaging, labor costs, etc. Then apply a markup that covers your overhead and leaves room for profit. Premium and luxury brands usually account for a 4 to 5x markup. Big question number 7, what legal steps are necessary for starting a clothing brand? You're going to need to do a few things. First, you're going to need to register your company as an LLC. I used LegalZoom for this. Number 2, you need to trademark your brand name and logo. This protects your IP or intellectual property. Generally, you're going to need a basic understanding of contract law for working with freelancers. Usually, if you're working with Alibaba or found a manufacturer through Pietra, the contracts are taken care of, especially if you pay for trade assurance. If you're hiring freelancers on Fiverr and Upwork, same kind of thing, they're going to handle those contracts for you. But if you are working with manufacturers and freelancers outside of one of those marketplaces, having an understanding of contract law is really going to help you out. So you don't get screwed over if you have a piece of clothing that a freelancer helped you design and then it really pops off and then they come after you like, oh, I need 50% of all the money you make. And then you're like, no way. And then they threaten to sue. It's a nightmare. Just make sure that you have contracts signed. Even if it's just a one-page agreement, just make sure that you're protected. Big question number 8. How do I order inventory without overstocking or running out of products? The easiest way to make sure you don't run into this problem is starting with small bulk orders. As low of an MOQ as your manufacturer will let you go. In my case, it started at 100. I had to order 100 pieces per color for a bulk order. But after working with the manufacturer for a while, I developed a relationship with them and they allowed me to start with 50 piece minimum order quantity for new capsules and collections with a little bit of an adjusted price but it's still very cost effective for me. So whenever I'm launching a new product, I always start with 50 pieces. I don't want to go over that. I don't want to get stuck with any inventory if the product flops. And because then I have to run more ads to sell them, which then eats up my profit margins. Shopify has built-in inventory management tools, which is amazing. I also track inventory in Airtable. If you don't use Airtable, you can use Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. In the future, I'll likely upgrade to using a platform like CN7, but that's usually for enterprise brands that are moving tens of thousands of products every month and they're in separate retail locations. I know they have some awesome AI tools built in, so I'll definitely look into that in the future as I start scaling the business. Big question number 9, should I sell strictly e-commerce in retail locations or both? Pretty much all new brands start with just e-commerce. And that's what I recommend to you if you are just starting a brand. I currently only have my brand online. You can't go to a retail location and buy it anywhere else other than my online store or from me in person. I use Shopify for all of my e-commerce solutions. I plan on expanding to having pop-up shops. That's what most brands do once they start to really build a little bit of a following and they're making sales on their website. They'll do events and pop-up shops around specific capsules. I'm going to be doing more pop-up events. The next step after that is retail partnerships, getting your clothes in a retail location. However, I recommend waiting as long as you can for this. Getting in a low-quality boutique that sells a bunch of low-quality brands will affect the brand image. Online stores typically have lower upfront costs than having a retail location or just doing pop-ups. But you need to know how to make content and do digital marketing to drive enough traffic to make sales. You could have the coolest clothes in the world, but if you only sell online, you have no social media presence and you don't post anything, nobody's going to buy it. Nobody's even going to see it. Big question number 10. How do I stand out and make my brand unique in a crowded fashion market? The most simple answer is you need to establish a unique value proposition. What makes your brand cool, special, or innovative? It could be sustainable materials. It could be you have very exclusive and unique designs. It could be that your clothing fits a very specific lifestyle aesthetic. Whatever you decide, it needs to be unique to you, and you can't just be copying another brand or another person. Because your story and the brand community you build around your story are key differentiators. For me, in 2025, I'm planning on doing more limited drops and catering the content to a specific aesthetic and customer. In the past, when I made anime streetwear, e-girls and Twitch streamers and fans of anime were the only people that wanted to buy my clothes. A couple of years later, when I did collaborations with underground rappers, the audience that resonated with that content was pretty much only fans of underground rap music. So those are 10 answers to the most burning questions related to starting a clothing or fashion brand. If you learned something new or enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover in a future video, please leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one. In 2024, I identified 5 major limiting beliefs that I had in my own head that have been stopping me from reaching my full potential as a fashion entrepreneur, creative director, designer, etc. And in this video, I'm going to expose all of them. I think many people watching my channel might relate to this. Sharing my experience might inspire some people, and it's a chance for me to tell a little bit more of my story on social media. I'm going to break down each of these limiting beliefs and then explain how I'm working on them to become a better brand owner and designer and creative director in 2025. So that way I can really put my brand on the map, make more money, and reach my full creative potential. The first major limiting belief I've identified is that multiple disciplines pull me in conflicting directions. For context, I run a fashion brand. I am a fashion designer. I'm also a music producer. I went to Berklee College of Music and I graduated. I've also worked for 3 different digital marketing agencies over the last decade. I think strategically and I'm really good at data analysis. So I have these left brain and right brain skills, some very creative, some very pragmatic and business oriented, which at times makes me feel a little fragmented. Like I'm giving energy to one project, which then takes time and energy away from another project. This caused me to resent all of the marketing jobs I was working at. where I'd be sitting there for hours like, damn, I'm working on all this marketing for other people's brands and for artists and musicians, but I'm not really applying it to my own brand. Maybe I'm wasting my time. These feelings ultimately led to a sense that excellence in one of these domains, like fashion or music, can only be achieved by sacrificing my focus in another. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to compartmentalize all of these different skills and put myself in a box, or rather a bunch of little boxes. This made me more stressed out around prioritization. Which topic should I focus on? Should I work on my brand today? Should I work on digital marketing today? And then if I make sacrifices where it's like, I spent all day yesterday working on my brand and now I need to catch up all day today working on my digital marketing agency job. When you feel like you're being pulled in all those directions, it gets overwhelming very quickly. So I decided to shift my mindset. I'm now realizing that my varied skills actually are a superpower, where each skill informs and enriches the others. So instead of seeing them as competing demands, I'm looking at it like this. The creativity that I exude when I'm working on music production fuels original design concepts for my fashion brand. Understanding digital marketing insights and being able to analyze data efficiently feeds back into a deeper understanding of consumer psychology, which was useful in all my pursuits. Switching this mindset has given me immense clarity, where now as long as I'm staying proactive and working on something, whether it's marketing, music, designing clothes, it all is contributing to this ongoing narrative of who I am. The fact that I have all of these skills and I'm able to apply them to a cohesive project, for example, designing the clothes, creative directing the photo shoot, and making the music for a marketing campaign related to a clothing drop, sets me apart. Instead of having to hire a music producer to make some custom music for me or using terrible royalty-free music, I can now make the music for my own projects. Instead of having to shell out $5,000 for a creative director and an art director to help me plan out the entire photo shoot for an upcoming collection, I can do all the planning myself and then spend way less money outsourcing the little aspects that I need tightened up. The next limiting belief I've identified is my need for external validation to gauge my success. Data-driven decisions have been a part of my approach since I started working professionally. I'm constantly looking at numbers and analytics because the numbers and analytics help guide my approach for marketing and product strategy. And there are moments where I rely heavily on external feedback, whether that's from the market responding to a piece of music or clothing that I put out, feedback from peers, streaming metrics, and especially social media engagement. So for all of 2025, I'm working on being more balanced. I'm working on balancing the data with my internal conviction. External data obviously is very valuable, but it's really meant to confirm or refine my instincts, not override them. Because my best creative ideas typically begin in very personal spaces outside of popular consensus. When I'm making a piece that is truly unique to me, I'm not thinking so much about what other people are going to think or how my customer is going to respond to it. At least not as much now as a couple years ago, where I was just focusing on whatever the data says. I need to be a little more trusting in myself, in my own taste, which is something that is very subjective. I feel like my taste, especially for fashion, has been developing over the years. And it wasn't until very recently that I felt like I had a sense of taste. I could form an opinion about something and use that to create my own ideas and roadmaps for my brand outside of just whatever the trend report is saying or whatever I think is going to sell based on whatever's popping on TikTok and whatever. My third limiting belief is fear of overexposure versus authentic storytelling. When I'm simultaneously marketing or putting out content related to my fashion brand and music production, I worry about oversaturating my audience and diluting my brand narrative. For example, people might come to my page because they like my music and then they see my fashion and they might think my fashion is ass. That dilutes my brand. Or if someone likes the fashion content and then they see the music and they think my music is ass, that can dilute the brand as well. And you won't really know if people think something is ass or not until you put it out. I definitely hold back from bold promotional strategies related to my personal brand because I fear seeming too sales oriented and inauthentic. Some people call this imposter syndrome. I guess you could say I'm experiencing imposter syndrome to a certain extent. In 2019, I sold an online course related to music marketing. I had taken all of my notes from my music business major at Berkeley, turned them into an online course with videos. It was very comprehensive. And I ran a ton of ads to sell it. I made like $100,000 in a few months. It was insane. But everybody that I went to Berkeley with, and even people that I went to high school with, were absolutely beat over the head by my ads, to the point where many of them started to resent seeing my face because they just associated seeing my face with having an online course shoved down their throats. When I came to this realization, the amount of money I was making didn't even matter to me at that point. I was so embarrassed, and I didn't want people to think I was just that kind of person where I just saw my friends as an opportunity to make money, and it didn't sit with me right. It made me feel very icky. And I may be carrying that icky feeling with me now as I get more into making YouTube and being a brand owner. So walking that balance between being pushy and promotional and being too withdrawn has been difficult for me to navigate, but I'm definitely getting there. I think making YouTube videos like this and getting more comfortable speaking to the camera and having my face on camera has been amazing and really unlocked this newfound confidence, or rather maybe it was a confidence that was always there, but I just had this, again, icky feeling from several years ago that was holding me back from jumping back into content creation. A way that I'm proactively working on this and trying to get better about it is by reframing my marketing as an active service. People will benefit from the content I make, even if it's just one person. If my content solves a problem or benefits their life in any way, that's a win. Marketing is simply a means to communicate value. So I ground each of my videos on YouTube or my marketing campaigns or my email campaigns in the story that I want to share, which ensures sincerity and clarity. I'm being super real, and I'm not running a ton of ads to my friends. I'm focusing on organic content, and I'm letting the algorithm find my people that resonate with my message. In fact, I actually haven't told any of my friends other than like one or two and my mom about this YouTube channel, and I likely won't tell people on my Instagram or start promoting it until I reach about 5,000 subscribers, because I think that will be enough proof of concept for me, and by then I'll have practiced making enough videos where I really feel comfortable sharing this content with my peers and close friends. So yes, I'm reframing marketing as an active service. I'm posting more and getting a little bit better every day. That way I will eliminate the fear of overexposure and only tell authentic stories related to my experience. The fourth limiting belief is perfectionism, stemming from my formal education and industry standards. I have a formal background in music business, which is a double-edged sword. My degree has armed me with knowledge of industry processes and standards. I consider myself to have a good ear for an industry standard. I can immediately tell within the first 3 seconds of listening to something if it's subpar or not up to industry standard. In other words, not competitive. I've found myself in social circles of music industry professionals that have #1 records and #1 albums. I'd like to think I have a good idea of what competitive means and what industry standard is in terms of music and music marketing and the adjacent creative industries. But this has fueled a tendency for perfectionism. I don't want to fall short of my idea of industry standard. It's extremely embarrassing if I put out a piece of work and then my peers that have a very high expectation feel like it falls short, which again gets back into the dilution of my brand, right? If a bunch of industry professionals think my music is ass, they're going to assume that my fashion is ass too, and then I'm just ass. This has also led me to go long stretches of time without releasing clothes because I had this idea that each collection needed to be 20 plus pieces with all different types of content. I've realized that perfectionism can stall my creativity, and experimentation and iteration has been key for me actually improving much faster than before when I was really focusing on things being perfect. A more ad hoc strategy has allowed me to really spread my wings. The fifth limiting belief is a concern over balancing my creativity with data-driven insights. I value the data very much, like I was saying earlier at the beginning of this video. But in creative fields like fashion and music, success depends heavily on intangible factors like taste, aesthetics, and cultural connections. Overanalyzing the data might hold me back from letting the creativity flow, which can lead to second-guessing creative choices when they don't really align with the numbers. But I really need to see data as a guardrail more than a cage. I see analytics more as a guide to making decisions without restricting experimentation. Sometimes you just need to turn the camera on and talk. Sometimes you need to be really transparent and just put yourself out there. Sometimes you need to take a risk to create a unique design that actually resonates with a target audience. Not everybody just wants trends all the time. And if there is one thing I've learned from spending over $1 million on ads, it's that ads can just stop working at any given notice, and you won't know why right away. Relying too heavily on the data and the trends can be like putting blinders on a horse. We need to see the complete picture in order to make the most informed decisions. All right, so that's how I am restructuring my mindset for 2025 in order to put out more content, become more comfortable on camera, create more cutting edge designs for fashion, create better music that more people will want to listen to and dance to. Ultimately, I just want to take my career to the next level without holding myself back. No one can hold me back more than myself. Here's to genuine growth all 2025. If you found this video interesting or valuable, please like and subscribe. It helps me out so much. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover in a future video, please leave a comment and I'll see you in the next one.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. My name is Chris Drago. I run a brand called Pathos of Things, and I am also a fashion designer and creative director. In today's video, we are going to talk about the true cost of running a clothing brand. I'm going to break down pretty much all of the expenses that you can expect, and this will apply to new brand owners and aspiring brand owners alike. So as I'm sure you know, starting a clothing brand requires careful budgeting. A lean launch can cost as low as $500, while a more premium collection may require $5,000 or more. I'm going to break down a few of the main categories of expenses, and then I will elaborate on each of them a little bit more in more detail on the coming slides. So the main categories I've identified that relate specifically to my experience are initial design and samples, production costs, branding and marketing, inventory and fulfillment, and legal and operational fees. Investing in graphic design, pattern creation, and prototypes typically costs between $200 and $1,000. If you're doing print on demand, that starts around $5 to $20 per item, while bulk manufacturing requires $1,000 to $10,000 for minimum order quantities, or MOQs. When I first started my brand Pathos of Things, I did strictly print on demand. It was a great way for me to learn the ropes, learn about fulfillment, learn about just running a brand in general, figuring out what types of designs customers liked. And it gave me time and experience, which in my opinion was really important and extremely valuable for me. I think if I jumped into doing bulk manufacturing and ordering samples and all that before doing the print on demand method, I would have made way more mistakes and fallen on my face more, and ultimately just burned a lot more money, which I'm sure for a lot of starting entrepreneurs and starting clothing brand founders, not burning money is like the ultimate goal. I know a lot of people start with very little budget. So even investing something like $1,000 for a small bulk order is just not feasible. For branding and marketing, you're going to have to pay for logo design, packaging, your website, and digital ads. If you end up going the digital ads route, I'll talk about alternatives like organic social media marketing, things like that. But for this, you'll often need anywhere from $300 to $3,000. If you are going to stock inventory and do fulfillment that way, instead of doing print on demand, stocking items up front can require anywhere from $500 to $5,000, depending on the order quantity and the warehousing. Obviously, if you're doing this at home, like you just have bins set up in your basement, that's going to be a pretty low cost, but you trade the monetary cost for time. So if time and space are not readily available to you, for example, if you work a full-time job and you have a small apartment, doing fulfillment and inventory managing yourself is probably not the best. And you're going to want to look into something like a 3PL or a third-party logistics program or company. And then for legal and operational fees, there's business registration, trademarks, and other basic tools like using LegalZoom, for example. I use LegalZoom to register my business. I'm based in California, but my business is a Delaware LLC. Getting more into the nitty-gritty now, for the initial design and samples, design and sampling are foundational steps, obviously. They set the tone for the product quality, brand identity, and customer appeal. Custom logos, prints, and visuals can cost anywhere from $100 to $500 depending on the designer rates. So I had a designer named Hunter. I'm not sure if it's one person or a group. They remain anonymous. But Hunter with a V instead of a U. I had them redo my wordmark logo, and that cost $500. They gave me a few variations, which is really cool. And then I gave them some revisions, and we ended up landing on one logo that I still use. I've been using for a couple of years now, and I absolutely love. It's the main Pathos of Things logo. I've seen people use ChatGPT or Midjourney to create logos for them. I find that this works for brands that maybe aren't so serious, or they aren't sure if the brand is going to continue long term, and it's a good way to start, I think. But generally, I find that logos created by really experienced and professional graphic designers resonate more with an audience than just using some very quickly generated ChatGPT logo. But I think as the AI gets more and more advanced over time, this is probably going to change, and I wouldn't be surprised if the graphic design role gets automated. I don't want to scare anybody, but it seems like the AI tools might be going in that direction. So in that case, the cost of custom logos, if you're just going to use AI, if you're going to use ChatGPT, for example, that's like $20 a month for the Pro plan, which is way less expensive than, spending $500 for a custom logo from a pro graphic designer. But I digress. Next is the pattern making, and I'm going to break down the graphic design and pattern making a little more in the next couple of slides. If you're unfamiliar with patterns, those are the exact specifications that a manufacturer will need to cut the fabric. It's like a technical blueprint for garment construction, and may run $50 to $300 per style depending on the pattern maker. So I hire a woman named Ozgor. She lives in Turkey, and she charges me $200 for all of my patterns, but that also includes a tech pack and 3D renders, and she uses a software called Clo3D, which I'll talk a little bit more about. Next is sample development. So these are the physical prototypes of your garments. The cost really depends on the materials, the detail, and the location of your manufacturer. When I work with my Chinese manufacturer, they usually will charge me a flat rate per sample, and that's anywhere from $80 to $100 depending on the type of garment. Like if it's a t-shirt or a really simple pair of cargo pants, it's usually around $80. But for more in-depth pieces or detailed pieces, it's a little bit more expensive, and that's usually around $100 to $150. The materials and the detail will typically impact how much time it takes to create that sample. Usually the manufacturer wants to factor that in heavily, right? If something takes them a really long amount of time, they're paying a lot more for labor, and then that's going to directly influence the sample cost. But like I said, if it's just like a simple t-shirt or something, or you're printing on a blank and they have blanks on demand that you can just, say, oh, I want this one or I want that one, then it really doesn't take the manufacturer that much time to get your sample made, so it's going to be much cheaper. Revisions and tweaks. There are always revisions and tweaks. I always suggest that you expect extra costs for design or fit adjustments after initial sampling. I try to get the sample right the first time now because I do an extensive pre-prep or pre-sample process with a Clo 3D atelier. I'll talk more about that. As long as the Clo 3D pattern and the visual, the mock-up is accurate, I know that I can just give that to the manufacturer and then they'll be able to make the garment exactly how I'm envisioning it. If you're using a mock-up pack or something like the Siegs mock-up pack, for example, I know a lot of beginning clothing entrepreneurs use mock-up packs to create their designs. That's kind of letting the manufacturer just wing it, right? So chances are you're going to get that sample back and it's not going to be exactly how you imagined it, or it's not going to be perfect. And then you'll probably need to say, oh, I need to adjust the fit of the shoulders or the inseam of these pants, things like that, which comes after the initial sampling process. And then you'll have to pay to get another sample made. The manufacturer might charge you less for additional sample revisions, but chances are it takes the company the same amount of time and the same amount of fabric to create that sample adjustment. So in my experience, at least, it's usually the same price for a sample revision as it is for the alpha sample or the first sample. If you want to hire a freelancer or an agency to do the design and samples, like I said, I hire a freelancer. Her name is Osgore. Her information is in the free Skool community. And if you would like me to personally introduce you to her, I set up intros for all the members of my paid community. So check that out if you're interested. Freelancers are going to be more budget friendly than hiring an agency that does full package services. The agencies are going to have a much higher rate. It also depends on where the freelancers or the agencies are located. I'm based in the US, so if I work with a freelancer from overseas, it's going to be cheaper because you're leveraging the difference in value between the US dollar and the currency wherever that freelancer lives. Typically, hiring a US agency is going to be the most expensive. Elaborating a little more on the graphic design, this, like I was saying before, includes the logos, maybe apparel prints if you're screen printing on a t-shirt or a hoodie, for example, website assets, and marketing visuals. So the cost here is going to depend strictly on the designer's experience, complexity of work, and number of deliverables. Also, what will affect the price is if they are overseas or not. If you're based in the US, it's pretty much always going to be cheaper to hire an overseas graphic designer than it will be if you hire a US-based designer. Apparel graphics like t-shirt prints and embroidery artwork will typically cost anywhere from $50 to $150, especially if the designs are hand-drawn or highly detailed. When I was first starting out, I did the whole logo on a hoodie, logo on a t-shirt thing that most brands do when they're first starting. But I also drew my own graphics. I made anime-inspired graphics from scratch, custom in Adobe Illustrator, and then I printed those on blanks. Specifically, I printed on a Bella Canvas 3001 blank, which was sourced through Printful, which was a print-on-demand company, which I'll talk a little bit more about. This was great for me because I didn't have to pay a designer to make the apparel graphics. I was just making the graphics myself. Next, for brand guidelines, this is also something that I recommend you do yourself rather than hiring. But if you really have no creative direction chops at all, it might be good to hire someone at least for the first project so you can kind of get an idea of how a creative director would put together brand guidelines. If you're curious, I have several videos about brand guidelines and design systems, and I have lots of templates that you can just copy into Figma or PowerPoint and follow along to create your own brand guidelines, which includes your logo, typography, colors, things like that. Most designers will let you do 2 to 3 revisions, at least in my experience, and then they'll charge you more if you need more revisions. But as long as you are articulating your idea well enough, I don't think you'll need more than 2 revisions. I never needed more than 2 revisions because I would approach that graphic designer with a very clear set of guidelines and rules for them to follow. So that way they could best execute on my vision, and I'm not just leaving my vision in the hands of random graphic designer that I hired. And then again, I won't harp on this too much, but freelancer versus agency. I always recommend starting with a freelancer. There's nothing wrong with going on Fiverr or Upwork and looking for freelance graphic designers, or going on Instagram And usually they'll say commissions open or commissions closed in the bio of their page. And for anyone with open commissions, you can just send them a DM and say, hey, I'm looking to hire you. Let's talk rates. And they'll hit you back. So to go more in depth on the pattern making, like I was saying about Osgore, she's an atelier and she uses Clo 3D. And when using a Clo 3D atelier, the pattern making is all digital. So you don't have to order test fabric. You don't need to cut any fabric. It's zero waste. And in my opinion, it's the future and it's here to stay. These technical blueprints or patterns are really essential for accurate garment construction and virtual prototyping. So like I was saying before, as long as the Clo 3D patterns and virtual mock-ups are accurate and look how I want them to look, I can just give that to the manufacturer and then they just follow the patterns and follow my tech pack and then make the garment exactly how I envision it. This typically costs $100 to $300 per style. It costs me $200 when I work with Osgore, but this doesn't just include the patterns. It also includes the fit simulation on a virtual avatar, which reduces the sample rounds and physical waste, which is great. You can post that you are, eco-friendly on your social media and your website. You can include that in the about page of your brand on your website and say that you do zero waste sampling. But also Osgore includes a tech pack, which is essential when sending that to a manufacturer. So the combination of having a pattern sheet with specific dimensions that the manufacturer can cut or feed into a machine and then have the machine cut the fabric as well as a tech pack is great for making sure they have the complete picture of how you want your garment to be made and cut and sewn and stitched and everything. Simple t-shirts, like I was saying, are always going to cost less. Multi-piece garments like jackets or dresses are more expensive due to added detailing, more fabric, and it just takes more time. I have Osgore send me editable files for Clo 3D so I can open the pattern files in my own Clo 3D if I want, or I know my manufacturer specifically has Clo 3D in-house and they have an in-house designer that can open up the Clo 3D pattern file, and then that just gives them more context and more things to work with. And if they need to make any last minute changes to the pattern, they can just do that from directly within Clo 3D, or I can do it within Clo 3D instead of having to hire Osgore to make more revisions. Next is sample development. So this includes providing the physical prototype, like I just mentioned, with details about fit, construction, and design accuracy before bulk production. There are 5 aspects that directly influence the cost. So cost of materials, premium fabrics, linings, and trims raise the cost per sample. Premium fabrics are like silk, anything other than just like basic cotton. Synthetic fibers also might be a little bit more expensive. Linings add extra fabric, which just directly translates to extra cost, and also increases the weight of the sample, and then you might pay more for shipping if the product is heavier. And trims, these are things like zippers, buttons. Trims need to be sourced, and then they need to be added and stitched into the garment. So if you have a bunch of different trims with custom buttons and custom zippers, things like that, that's going to increase the cost of the sample. If you are hiring, let's say, an Italian atelier, and they're very skilled with decades of experience, that's going to increase your cost. Skilled tailors or technical developers demand higher fees. The manufacturer location directly influences the cost. Samples made locally cost more, but typically offer better communication and turnaround speed. At least in my experience working with US manufacturers, the samples were 5 times the price, but the manufacturer was in my time zone, so there was some synergy there. But I will say also the US manufacturers, at least in my experience, were not better at communicating in general than the one Chinese manufacturer that I trust and have been using for years. So I'm going to try a few different American manufacturers again in the near future, and then I can keep you guys updated and let you know how that goes. Next is production costs. So production is the most variable cost, meaning it could be really expensive or really cheap. And that's directly influenced by the quantity. So how many pieces you order, the quality of the fabric, and the method of production and shipping. Your choice between print on demand and bulk manufacturing impacts upfront investment and scalability. So if you do print on demand, like using something like Printful or Printify or Scalable Press, it's very low risk. You don't need to order any inventory. And the per item cost ranges from $5 to $20. So the way that works is you list a product on your website, someone buys it, then that order gets sent to the print on demand company where they will print and ship your product for you. On the other hand, you have bulk manufacturing, which requires upfront orders, usually $1,000 to $10,000, depending on quantity and complexity. If you're just doing like a 50-piece MOQ for a pair of pants, that'll usually cost you, I don't know, maybe around $1,000. At least in my experience, it's come out to around $1,000 or maybe around $20 per piece. If you want access to an overseas manufacturer with a 50-piece MOQ, let me know in the Skool community. I share all the details about my manufacturer, and I also make personalized introductions for the paid Skool members. The cost per unit will decrease if you order more pieces. So if you order 50 pieces, it's going to be more expensive per piece than if you order 500 pieces. In my experience, that cost decreases drastically as you order more. So you kind of get into this feedback loop over time. As you make more sales and you expand the business, then you order more pieces, and then it gets less expensive to order those pieces, and then you have higher profit margins, and then the brand really starts to scale and grow. Another thing to note is that labels, embroidery, or any kind of special fabrics will significantly raise the base costs per piece. This applies to both print on demand and bulk manufacturing. Adding a printed label on a t-shirt might increase the price for print on demand by like $4, which is actually crazy. If you're selling a $20 or $30 t-shirt, adding an extra $4 to your upfront costs will eat up your margins significantly. I find that it doesn't make as much of an impact if you're doing bulk manufacturing. Adding labels tends to mess up the margins more with print on demand. Next is inventory and fulfillment costs. So this pretty much involves all the storing, organizing, and shipping of the products, otherwise known as operations. Costs depend on your sales volume, the storage needs, and whether you handle fulfillment in-house or if you outsource it. We already kind of touched on how much it will cost for upfront inventory, but for warehousing fees, the storage facilities charge monthly, usually $50 to $500 depending on space and location. I use a 3PL company called Pietra. They charge me $55 a month to house my products in their bins. Like the fulfillment services, outsourcing to a 3PL typically costs per item shipped, which is usually between $2 and $5, plus postage. If you offer free shipping, you're going to pay for shipping yourself. And if you have small orders, like you have one order every day or every couple days, you're going to get hit with small order fees. An in-house setup is where you fulfill everything from home. So you might have bins where you separate your inventory by size and color. This is cheaper initially, but it limits your scalability because it takes a ton of time to pack and ship orders manually. So if you're moving high volume, it's better to outsource to a 3PL. And there are also costs in regard to returns. So if a customer is returning an item to your 3PL company or warehouse, they're going to charge you for returns. And then also returns just eat up your time if you're handling it yourself and you're self-fulfilling. Handling returns and refunds is a huge pain in the ass. And that's one of the major benefits of having a 3PL because they make it pretty simple. Last week, someone returned a pair of pants that I sell on my site because they didn't quite fit. Pietra processed the return for me, sent them a return slip, and then the customer just sent the pants back. They were refunded, and then they placed an order for the right size. So that was really painless for me, and one of the major benefits of using a 3PL like Pietra. Next is branding and marketing, which are super essential if you're going to stand out and be competitive. One of the key aspects of being a competitive brand is having a competitive website. I use Shopify. Shopify charges me, I believe, $40 a month, and I paid $300 for a premium theme. Custom sites on other platforms or even within Shopify, if you hire a company to build the site for you, those sites can exceed $1,000 in costs. Next is packaging and labels. I was thinking about putting this in the operations slide or even the bulk production slide, but I included it in here. The packaging and labels will include custom tags, boxes, and poly mailers, which will typically cost between $100 and $500 for small batches. I personally order custom hang tags, custom stickers, custom frosted zipper bags, which the garments are put into, custom tissue paper wrapped around the zipper bags, and poly mailers. So then the whole package is put into a poly mailer, and then that is what gets shipped to the customer. Custom packaging can get really expensive if you overdo it, especially if you're ordering like boxes. I think boxes are kind of overkill sometimes and will eat up the margins, especially if you're doing custom poly mailers and boxes or custom zipper bags and boxes. I have a whole video about packaging that I highly recommend that you watch, which kind of breaks down how I approach packaging and how I save money on packaging. And next is digital ads. So running social media ads like Meta ads, TikTok ads, or Google ads, to run it effectively starts at around $100 to $1,000 per month. Really, I think if you're going to be cooking the algorithm and getting enough data in there to make sales, you should be running like $100 per day. Just in my opinion and my experience, having worked for several different digital marketing agencies and having spent over $1 million on TikTok and Meta ads alone. So yeah, I think if you don't have that kind of budget, it's probably not a great idea to go into paid ads right away. Instead, I recommend focusing on social media content, organic social media content. So going out of your way to make really high quality visuals, or even if it's not super high quality, just something candid that will connect with an audience. Candid TikTok videos tend to do pretty well. I've had a couple of TikTok videos go viral just from filming clips in my backyard and then putting overlays of high quality photos from a photo shoot I did. Those types of videos work really well. And influencer partnerships. This could be by DMing influencers on Instagram or even just sending out clothes to your friends and asking for reviews and photos and videos in return. They might not be professional influencers, but they're still influencers per se if they're highlighting a product, then you use that for promotional materials. I think getting your friends to wear your clothes and then getting photos and videos of that and putting it on your social media and on your website is a great way to build trust. It's going to seriously increase sales and decrease the amount of ad spend required too if you end up going with the digital advertising route. Next, we have legal and operational fees like business registration. Filing fees for LLCs or sole proprietorships typically cost anywhere from $50 to $500. I used LegalZoom and it was pretty inexpensive. So if you're in the US, I recommend using something like LegalZoom. Next is trademark filing. Protecting your brand name and logo can cost $250 to $750 per class in the US. Accounting tools like QuickBooks or Wave can cost anywhere from $10 to $50 a month. Contracts and agreements like legal templates or consultations can run several $100s. But in the beginning stages, you're probably not going to have to worry so much about contracts and agreements. That's definitely something more down the line. So if you're just starting, like, don't get overwhelmed by all of these legal and operational fees. A lot of brands, when they're first starting, like, don't even file a trademark or anything like that. But if you are going to be selling on Shopify, for example, you will need to register the business and get an EIN number so you can open a bank account and then collect payments. You don't want to be just collecting payments and importing that directly into like a private savings or checking account. The IRS is not going to like that, and your bank might actually freeze your account. I ran into something like this several years ago. I was selling some info products online, and I had tens of thousands of dollars just pumped into my personal checking account pretty quickly. It was all legit. I was selling an online course. My banker told me that if I didn't set up an LLC and get a specific EIN number for that online course company, they were going to freeze my account, freeze my assets. So just totally avoid that completely. Just go through the proper business registration process. It's super easy to do. Again, use something like LegalZoom, and it'll save you a ton of headache. And then essential licenses. Some states, countries require resale permits or fashion-specific licenses. Chances are you're probably not going to have to worry about this. If you are not from the US, I'm sorry, but I don't really think I can help you that much. You're going to have to Google it or use something like ChatGPT to help you out. Just because I'm unfamiliar with the essential licenses and laws related to other countries outside the US, and I don't want to potentially steer anyone in the wrong direction. So in conclusion, the total costs here range anywhere from $1,800 to around $22,000, depending on scale, quality, and business model. If you are just starting out, it's very easy to keep these costs low, but that doesn't mean that you will have an easy time making sales. Typically, I think that the more you invest into it, the more you get out of it. But I also don't recommend just like blowing all of your money or your whole check or your life savings on starting a brand. Starting small and learning the ropes, in my opinion, is always the way to go. You will make lots of mistakes. You will learn a lot of hard lessons, and it's better to learn hard lessons with smaller amounts of money than your whole paycheck or your life savings. Start small, expand over time. It'll be very worth it for you, and it'll save you a ton of headache. Overall, the most cost-effective methods, if you really are trying to keep the budget as low as possible, are going with print on demand in the beginning, so that way you completely avoid inventory costs and you don't have to worry about MOQs or negotiating bulk orders with a manufacturer. Hiring a Clo3D designer will reduce the need for lots of physical sample revisions, and you won't need to cut real fabric or you won't need to know how to sew. This ultimately is going to reduce the amount of shipping expenses and sample expenses. Hiring a freelance designer is more affordable than going with an agency for logos or web design. Hiring someone like Hunter to get a really high quality professional logo and then buying a premium Shopify theme, that might cost you around $800 total, but it's going to save you a ton of time. It's going to look super competitive, and you're not going to have to worry about hiring a really expensive agency that might charge you $5,000 for a website build. DIY platforms like Shopify, Canva, and Printful are super low cost. Canva for branding, Shopify for e-commerce, and Printful for fulfillment and operation. And then organic marketing, like I was saying, instead of going all in on paid ads in the beginning, you don't need to just start running paid ads in order to have a successful clothing brand. You can sell out a collection completely organic. So build your brand with social media presence, organic content, influencer partnerships, even if that's just working with your friends and getting them to give you a review or a testimonial and some photos or videos of them wearing the clothes. And then community engagement. So building like an Instagram, whether that's a personal Instagram or a brand Instagram, that's going to get you much further, in my experience, than just coming out the gate with paid ads or hiring a media buyer or hiring a marketing agency, for example. That all can come later. And as you start making more money and you have more money to invest back into the brand, hiring something like a media buyer or a digital marketing agency will be great for saving time and scaling the brand. But until you get that proof of concept, it's really not worth it. So that's my video about the true cost of running a clothing brand. I hope you found this helpful. Please like and subscribe if you did find it helpful, and be sure to check out my Skool communities. Again, I have a free Skool community and a paid community. There's a ton of value in both, and I look forward to connecting with you, and be on the lookout for the next video. Thank you.